What's up, everybody? I think we are now live. So hopefully you guys can all hear me okay. Let me know if everything seems to be running well, and we'll get started with this live stream. I'm happy to be back doing another live stream. It's been a couple of months now since our little baby girl was born, and it was kind of trying to figure out the schedule and kind of just deal with that for a few months here. Now we've got all that under control, and she's doing great. I'm able to get back to doing the live streams here. I'm going to try and start doing again, every month or so, because I really enjoy doing these, and I really miss not doing them for the past few months. But I'm happy to be back, and hopefully you guys are having a great weekend here. It's like almost 90 degrees here in Pittsburgh today, so nice hot weather, and it's a beautiful weekend. But I see we already have a few people in here. But before we get into some of the questions here, I first just want to thank you all for joining, and let you know that, like as usual, I always do the what are they called, the extra what are they? I'm totally blanking. This is the fun part of being live. The super chat. That's it. That's the word I was looking for. Super chat questions. Those always take priority, and then I'll answer all the other questions, and we'll get to as many as we can. Usually, I feel like I do a pretty good job of answering most questions. But yeah, so we'll just get right into it. But hopefully everyone can hear me okay. Everything's good. No one's saying otherwise, so I think we're good. So we'll just keep on going. But we see Dozier Shaw's first question here. He said, "Hey, Matt, do you know when Honda will reveal the North American version of the 2022 HRV?" I have no clue. Sometimes things take a long time, like in a Toyota with the Corolla Cross. That came out overseas like 6 months ago, and then they just revealed it here, a few weeks ago. So sometimes it's a long delay. Other times it's not as much of a delay. I believe they did say though that it is going to be a very unique vehicle here for the U.S. market, and it's not going to be like what we kind of saw for the rest of the world so far. So I don't know how different that is going to be, but it's totally a mystery as far as the HRV currently for the North American market. So we'll have to see what happens, but I'm assuming it should come pretty quickly. I mean, the HRV is hands down their oldest vehicle in the lineup now, and so considering how hot that segment is, they can't afford to just sit back and let the HRV, continue on as it is now, because they're going to lose so much, especially now with the Corolla Cross coming out in the fall. That's going to take a lot of sales too from people who want something from one of those established Japanese brands in that segment. So I think it should come, hopefully relatively soon. I'm guessing before the end of the year. We'll have to see. And Theodore Brooks said, "What do you truly think about the four-door Mustang, and why didn't the SS work?" I hope they do a four-door Mustang. I think the SS didn't work for a few different reasons. There's a few people I was having this discussion with back whenever I did the weekly update on the four-door Mustang. And I think, personally, I think part of it is it just didn't sell well because it was styled boringly in a lot of ways. I mean, it didn't look bad. It wasn't as cool looking as a Charger, for example. So that was part of the problem. And I think also they didn't market it. GM loves spending tons of money on cars and then not marketing them at all. So I don't think I've ever seen a commercial for a Chevy SS. And then a lot of people though said that it was by design, that basically they just had to use up Holden Commodore chassis, and they're like, well, we'll just sell them in the States, and they kind of were able to justify it, but they only needed to sell a few thousand or whatever, and that was it. And they didn't really care. Like, they actually by design didn't want it to sell a ton, and that it was a perfect success in Chevy's book because they did exactly what they wanted to do with it, and that was it. And that explains all those missteps that look like missteps but maybe were intentional. I still think they could have given it a cooler name. They could have called it Chevelle, and you sold way more just based on that alone, instead of calling it the Chevy SS, which was not only unexciting, but also very confusing for most people as well. So, I think the SS is a fantastic car, very underrated, definitely worth, checking out. If you're someone who wants a manual Charger, go get an SS. They're fantastic. But Luke O, thank you so much for the first super chat here. He said, "I just moved to Weirton, West Virginia, which is near Pittsburgh, PA. Any fun roads for my motorcycles? Let's turn onto this back road and see how it does style." There's a ton of good roads. And not even near Pittsburgh. There's actually more exciting roads, I think, probably closer to like that part of West Virginia. See, I don't know the names of the roads though, because it's been so long since I've been on them. But I will get back to you. If you actually want to send me a message on Facebook or an email or something, Luke, I'll be more than happy to try and go through my list. Now, there's a bunch of roads near Pittsburgh. So if you ever want a list of cool roads in the Pittsburgh area, I can give you those as well and go through all those. But there's a lot of good roads. That's one thing, southwestern PA and that whole area. I mean, you've kind of the mountains and stuff in West Virginia. There's so many good mountain roads and a lot of cool stuff. Some of the stuff is a little bit gravelly, so on a motorcycle it might be a little more sketchy, but most of them are still pretty well paved and stuff. But yeah, I'll try, and if you want to send me a message, I'll definitely try and give you a list of at least the stuff that I know. There's a lot of good stuff, I'm sure, and there's also motorcycle forums and stuff that can probably give you some good tips on roads as well. But I can certainly give you all my favorite roads around the Pittsburgh area. There's a lot of fun ones around here too. But Kyle, thank you so much for a super chat as well. He says, welcome back, Matt. Do more live streams. I really do look forward to them. Well, thank you for joining them. I really appreciate that. He said, GM needs to make Camaros quickly and ship ASAP. I want an LT1. What are your thoughts on the semiconductor shortage? It is a nightmare. And the LT1 is another example. Like I was just talking about GM not marketing stuff. The LT1, you would think, I mean, from a philosophical standpoint, it's like a home run, right? It's, gives people the cheap V8, people who don't need the SS features and all the leather and stuff, you just have a stripped down LT1. When they announced that model, I was like, this is brilliant. This makes so much sense. They're going to sell tons of these things. And then they didn't have any in the press fleet. So like no one that I know of has reviewed one, or if they did, I missed it. But I've been begging GM the past couple of years to send me an LT1. They never have one in the fleet on the East Coast. And actually my GM press vehicles come from New York. So it's like New York City, like primetime press fleet doesn't have any LT1s. And I'm like, what are you doing? Like, I just feel like it was a huge missed opportunity. The LT1 seems awesome. I'd love to try one out sometime. This whole semiconductor shortage is crazy. It's kind of one of those things I struggle to understand how they didn't see it coming and, why no one foresaw this as being a problem. It's not like a factory just like got destroyed and instantly took out production capacity or something. It was like they knew that like there was more demand. There should have been more warnings. I don't know. I don't know all the details of it, but obviously it's just a dumpster fire as far as the situation goes. And I don't know if you saw that just yesterday there was tons of flooding in Detroit. If any of you are in the Detroit area, you have my condolences. It was like 6 inches of rain, they said. Hopefully all of you guys are safe and don't have any damage. But yeah, it's kind of crazy. I think the lot, or the one shipping lot that is right near the production facility for the Grand Cherokee, the Grand Cherokee L, and the Durango got like flooded. And like most of these cars are like almost completely underwater. So on top of the shortage, now you have a bunch of cars that were actually produced and ready to go that are now just totaled, just straight to the crusher, forget it. And so anyone who wants to, well, it's probably too late now because I'm sure Monday morning, every Dodge and Jeep dealer is going to have an even bigger markup on all their existing Grand Cherokees, and forget about the Grand Cherokee L now for a while because that probably set them back big time on that. But yeah, it's not a great situation right now if you want to buy cars. But I mean, if you can sell a car and you can find another car at MSRP, there's no better time to flip cars. There's no better time to just sell what you have. And, I think what I've been seeing is that, like, yes, you might have to pay sticker price for a normal car you'd usually get a discount on. But if you're making so much more on your old used car, say for example, you make an extra $5,000 on your used car, and yeah, you're paying $2,000 more on your new car than you usually would, but you're still saving $3,000 there. So in some situations, I think even with the crazy shortage, if you can find a new car on a lot that you like, and you've been wanting to trade up, I think this is probably one of the best times to do it. And it's also the absolute most fantastic time if you have a lease that is ending this year. Like my sister's lease is actually ending on her Mazda 3 here next month. And the buyout price is like so much lower because they decided the buyout price 3 years ago at the beginning of the lease. That is like, $6,000 lower than the actual, value of her car right now, even with the normal miles and stuff. And so, you have a lot of equity in these leases that are ending. And I'm telling everyone, buy out your lease or work it into your next deal and be like, look, I got all this equity. And it puts you really good, really well ahead on your next car. And so for a lot of people, you can actually come out really ahead. And if you're someone like, I was talking in my Bullet update I just posted last week, if you're someone who like has a Bullet, for example, and you're not super attached to it, I could sell that car for like $3,000 under what I paid 3 years ago after driving it 15,000 miles. Like, it's wild. And like for people who like would like to upgrade to a Mach 1, even if you pay sticker for a Mach 1, there's no way you're ever selling your 3-year-old Bullet for $2,000 under sticker until those things are classics in 50 years or whatever. But it's very fascinating time. It's pretty wild stuff. But anyway, thank you for the super chat, Kyle. That Washer Nerd, thank you so much for the super chat as well. He says, how does picking up press cars work? Are they dropped off or do you have to drive to get them? Keep up the great work, especially the weekly updates. Thanks for watching them. And that's an interesting question. I don't think anyone's ever asked me that before. So it works differently depending on where you live. So I believe up in Canada, like the Straight Pipes and those guys have to actually drive to get their press cars. But I think most people here in the States, myself included, they just get dropped off in the driveway. So they're dropped off every week with a full tank of gas, totally detailed, and, ready to go. And then I drive it around for the week. I don't have to refill it with gas or anything. I just leave enough gas in there to, just have the common courtesy so they can get to a gas station easily or get to, the next stop they're needing to get to. So I don't leave them with an empty tank, but you don't have to refill the gas, and, they clean it up and do all that for you. That's the press fleet's job, is to manage the fleet and maintain the fleet. So they do all that stuff, and so it's really nice. My neighbors often marvel at the fact that every week someone just drops off a brand shiny new car in the driveway, and it's a pretty nice gig. So it's a lot of fun. I actually haven't had press cars for most of the month of June. This entire month I've actually kind of gotten to pretend like the Bullet was a daily driver and drive it basically every day. But that's coming to an end here. This Wednesday, I'll be getting a Honda Civic dropped off, the new 2022 Civic sedan. So I'm excited to try that out. And then I have a ton of press cars coming up here in the month of July. It's going to be very, very busy, tons and tons of cars. So I'm going to thankfully have a little bit of a backlog and be able to post, stuff a little bit, kind of a little bit more of a, backlog, just so that the weeks when I don't have a press car, it's not like I have to fill in the gaps. Like this past week, instead of doing a car review, I just had the Bullet update, and that kind of worked out nicely with the timing. And actually next week, since I, again, don't have a normal car review from a press fleet, I'm actually we're reviewing Beth's car. She's doing the review on her own car, even though the lease it's 2 years now. We've had her 2019 C300. We finally have gotten around. The stars have aligned, and we were able to finally do this review. So look forward to that next week. For all of you who always watch the interior reviews and say, why doesn't Beth drive? She isn't certified for the press fleets. I could go to the process of having her drive, but she hardly ever drives herself. Usually we go everywhere together, and the very few times where we don't, she just has her car, and that's fine. But so it's not worth the hassle of getting her signed up for all the cars. But this way you can see what it's like when she does a review and her thoughts on driving and stuff. So I'm sure many of you will get a kick out of that. And if you watched her review on her old C-Class from about 4 or 5 years ago, you kind of have a little bit of a sample, but it's, she's really improved in the past few years of being on camera and stuff with the interior reviews, that she's been doing a lot better. So yeah, stay tuned for that video on Wednesday. It'll be a fun one. And she'll actually be reviewing her own interior too on Tuesday. So hitting all the marks with that. But yeah, other questions here. I'm going to kind of skip to the bottom because we already have tons of questions. So I don't want to go from the top, but so Zachary Jones says, hey, Matt, what are your thoughts on my mom jumping from a 2002 Pontiac Grand Prix to a 2016 Chevy Malibu LT trim? I mean, that's definitely a huge upgrade as far as, going to a much newer, much safer car. So that's definitely a win there. The Malibus are fine. It's not my favorite vehicle in that segment, but it does have a lot of room for that segment of vehicle. So if you're someone who wants, something a little bit more spacious and comfortable and softer, that's one thing. Not everyone wants the razor sharp handling of the Accord or, the Camry and stuff like that. I think the Malibu is definitely softer, but I think for a lot of people, that comfort is more important. And so, the Malibu is great. The only thing I hated about the Malibu I had as a press vehicle was the stop-start system. Not only the fact that you couldn't turn it off, I don't think, but it was just really not smooth. And I didn't like the stop-start at all. And that would kind of annoy me, I think, if I, had to daily drive one. But other than that, I mean, there's nothing really to complain about with it. It was a really pleasant vehicle. The 2002 Pontiac Grand Prix, though, I think those are actually almost starting to become a little bit collectible, vehicles that are kind of getting to that age, because there's less and less of them out there. And it's kind of fascinating, seeing that kind of stuff. Because 2002, I was 12 years old. So that kind of stuff kind of fascinates me, kind of like how the Radwood stuff's really taking off for people that are like in their 40s and late 30s, you know, because they were around that stuff in the 80s and stuff. For me, it's 90s and early 2000s stuff that kind of fascinates me sometimes. Maybe I'll review some older stuff if I ever get the opportunity someday. But Luco, thank you so much for another generous super chat here. He says, I want a manual for my next car. I'm debating between the new Bronco or a Civic hatchback. I drive 350 miles away to visit family. Do I compromise on MPG for my road trips or four-wheel drive for the occasional snow? I mean, really with the snow, it comes down to how often do you have snow and how bad is it? You know, if it's super bad that you need a Bronco to deal with the snow, then I mean, you know, it's kind of, that's really the only way to go. But if it's, you know, mild snow, even a few inches of snow, even with snow tires, the Civic Hatch should be great. You know, in the snow, it should be, you know, no issue. Front wheel drive, pretty easy to handle. So that would probably be, you know, kind of the deciding thing there. I think also it depends how often you drive 350 miles to visit family. If it's something you do every week, definitely, you know, go for the Civic just because you'd get killed on gas in the Bronco. But, you know, so there's a few other little variables there, and I'll try and keep an eye out if you want to have any follow-up. And this is something I'm more than happy to also message back and forth with you on Facebook and, you know, kind of hash that out a little bit more. So it really just comes down to personal preference. So that's the one thing. I mean, like, obviously those two vehicles you're considering are polar opposites as far as driving experience goes. So it really just comes down to what you need it to do and, you know, how much snow versus how many road trips. I think, you know, whichever one is the larger of those two might be, you know, the way to go. But yeah, definitely feel free to send me more messages on Facebook or email or something. I'll be happy to talk you through that a little bit more, because that's why I do this channel. I do it just because I love helping everyone find the car they're going to love driving. I think if everyone has a vehicle they enjoy getting in every day and going to work in, it makes your day just a tiny bit better. It makes your life just a tiny bit better in an incremental way. And I think that the world would be a slightly happier place if everyone was driving something they actually enjoyed every day. And that's kind of what motivates me to help people find a car they're going to love. And that's different for everybody. That's one other thing, you know, with some of the comments, sometimes a lot of people don't understand that, you know, everyone likes something different and there's nothing wrong with that. And so trying to find the car that you will like for your life and what you need is why I don't have a blanket rating system. I'm not like, oh, Matt Maran thinks this car is a 10 out of 10, because it might not be a 10 out of 10 to you. And so that's why I kind of just lay out the information for you guys, give you, you know, all the information and say, if you like sharp handling, you'll like this. If you hate this one thing, this has that, or it doesn't, you know, and just kind of give you the tools to then make the right decision for you and not have you just go off of, oh, well, I gave it a, you know, A+ or whatever. Like, I think that is very misleading and just doesn't help people. I guess if you're curious what I think of it, you know, it's fine for that, but this channel isn't really about me, even though I'm always presenting. It's about helping you find a car for you. And so what I think about it isn't really as much of an importance in my mind, at least. It's just about giving you that information. Luke, I see you have another super chat here. You really don't have to keep doing super chats, although I appreciate it. But he says, I only drive to visit family once or twice a year, and this will be my first winter near Weirton, West Virginia. So I don't know what snowfall is like here. Gotcha, that's fair. So Weirton doesn't seem to be super bad. It's kind of similar to Pittsburgh, maybe a little bit worse, where, you know, you might have, and it also depends, I guess, how close to the mountains you are relative to Weirton, like what side you're on and stuff. But I mean, regardless, you know, I feel like you might not need a Bronco. It might not hurt to have all-wheel drive. You know, a Bronco might be a little bit overkill. You could, you know, compromise on something like a WRX or something like that and have the all-wheel drive, have a little bit more snow capability, but then still have decent fuel economy, something like that. But yeah, I mean, Weirton might be a little bit different than Pittsburgh, but honestly, in Pittsburgh, there's only maybe 5 or 6 good snowstorms in like the late January, middle of February, where it's like, wow, like if you don't have all-wheel drive, you're not going anywhere. And usually that's just for like the early morning hours, and the snow trucks come out, clear everything away, and then anyone with, you know, any other kind of vehicle that isn't all-wheel drive is totally fine. You know, and honestly, like I said, snow tires go so far. Snow tires on my Mustang got me through the winters here in Pittsburgh. Snow tires on my BRZ were fine, you know, all that kind of stuff. So, you know, I think snow tires definitely might, get you through and have you, so you can buy whatever you want to buy and then just throw snow tires on and you might be okay. Newt Media, also, thank you so much for moderating, Zach. I very much appreciate it. He said Crosstrek wouldn't be a terrible option as well. Still come in a manual for the premium model. That's true. Crosstreks are great. I still wish they had a little bit more power. The 2.5 certainly helped it a little bit, but yeah, the Crosstreks are great. I don't know why they haven't put the WRX motor in the Crosstrek yet. Like, what are they waiting for? Like, that is easy. Like, that is a money printing machine. Just throw the WRX motor in the Crosstrek, call it, Crosstrek XT, and make everyone happy. I don't know why Subaru doesn't go for the obvious easy money thing sometimes. It's like they almost like making people like me like bang my head against the wall. It's I don't get it. But yeah, anyway, like I said, feel free to send me more messages for sure if you're wanting to kind of talk through that a little bit more. But thank you so much again for the super chats. So we have Smile Per Mile says, hope your baby is doing well, Matt. From a passenger seat ride you had in the GR86, has it more or less met your expectations so far? I think so. I loved the new sound. I think that was a huge improvement over the old car that, I fixed right away with my BRZ. If you followed me back then, I kind of put this super loud exhaust on it, made mine sound kind of like a Lotus, I think is kind of the goal. And I think it kind of sounded like that. But yeah, so, I think, it was so hard to tell because being passenger with Ken Gucci driving, like I said, he could have been driving a golf cart and I would have been like, whoa, this is the most amazing thing ever because it's Ken Gucci driving. He's a master at driving. So it's kind of hard to say, honestly. Thankfully, I won't have much longer to wait to find out for myself because the media launch, the drive, I'm not sure when the actual reviews are going up, but it's like early August for when we'll actually be driving them. So an embargo might make us wait a little bit later to post that, but hopefully sometime in August, I'll finally be able to get behind the wheel and give you my definitive answer. But I am going on the trip. I'm already, signed up for it and stuff. So I'm very, very excited to show you guys what the GR86 is like as soon as I have a chance. Not sure about the BRZ. Haven't heard anything about a drive for that yet. But, it sounds like the differences will be pretty similar to what they were in the past, with the spring rate basically being the biggest change as far as how they feel handling wise. But yeah, I just think that they fixed the torque dip. It sounds better. So I'm inclined to think if I had to go into a totally blind and place the order tomorrow, I would go for it. I think it seems to be much, much improved and, should be pretty great. So Anwar, thank you so much for the super chat. He says, do you think Matt Farah's hate for Tesla is justified? So I haven't followed that. I have no clue what you're talking about. Unfortunately, I didn't realize he hated Tesla. It's kind of rare that I watch YouTube videos because I'm so busy making my own, and now I'm especially busy with the new baby and stuff. But I hadn't seen his crusade against Tesla. I think Tesla, they have their flaws, like lots of other companies do as well. But I think Tesla is doing a lot of really great things. I think, they've moved the ball forward for the electric car much further. And for a lot of people, maybe that's a terrible thing if you hate electric cars and stuff. But I think Tesla made electric cars cool because before that, Nissan was desperately trying to sell, the Leaf, and Chevy was trying to sell electrified stuff and no one wanted it. And it was just this dorky, nerdy thing. And Tesla made electric cool. Like, there's no denying that. Before Tesla, electric wasn't cool, and now it is cool thanks to Tesla, and everyone else is jumping into it, and it's a status symbol for a lot of people because Tesla. They're going to have their place in history as being the turning point, I think, for electric cars. And depending on how you feel about electric cars, I think that that's a really big deal. And I've driven several of them now. I spent a weekend with a Model S P100D. They're very, very impressive vehicles. And their fanboys can get a little bit annoying. That's one thing that might keep me away from owning one, honestly. And I think that, again, there's still some flaws like I talked about in the Mach-E review. I love that the Mach-E actually has gauges in front of me, like the Model 3 and Model Y don't. I like that I have Apple CarPlay, which is a glaring omission from Tesla. But aside from those couple of things, I think the Tesla's, pretty impressive. Obviously, their supercharger network is second to none and actually makes it so you can road trip without having a huge inconvenience anymore. And there's all kinds of things that, are really hard things to do. I mean, look at how everyone's struggling to come up with charging infrastructure. And Tesla's been having the charging infrastructure for the past 5 years now, and it's been great. And, I mean, there's just so many things that all these huge companies with tons of money are really struggling with: how to make their electric vehicle reliable, how to make it have a decent charging rate, how to make all these things. Tesla's like, yeah, they're just sitting back like, we've been doing this for years, like, try and keep up, and that's kind of what everyone's trying to do now. Everyone's dumping all their money that they're investing, that they used to invest in gas engines, and they're now, rushing to dump it all into spending billions and billions to come up with stuff just to be up to par with Tesla. Not even beating Tesla. They're just trying to keep up. I mean, look at the Plaid. I mean, that's wild. I don't know how you could look at the Plaid and not be impressed. Like, yeah, it's one-dimensional. It's silent, and it's only goes fast in a straight line and maybe turns, a little bit better. But like, I mean, still, they're doing 2 seconds 0 to 60s for 130 grand. Who else is doing that? Rimac might be a little bit faster, but they're $4 million. All the other stuff is way more expensive. And so, it's just, I don't know. I think Tesla's got a pretty good checkmate position where I don't think you can really, find a flaw that, that isn't overcome by all the other awesome things that they're doing with their company. So yeah, the build quality might not be great, all that kind of stuff. But like I said, I think it's an awesome thing. I mean, if you follow like my buddy Jason of Engineering Explained, he loves his, Model 3. It's been reliable. It's been a great road trip vehicle, and, they hold up pretty well, it seems. So, yeah, I would definitely consider owning one in the future. But as of right now, and I'm enjoying the gas stuff as long as we can here. But yeah, and I know a lot of people are, questioning the claim of the 0 to 60 time for the Plaid. And yeah, if it's 2.3 seconds 0 to 60 or whatever, still, I mean, come on, that's still going to be out dragging everything else out there. And, it's still just mind-blowingly fast. So, yeah, that's part of Tesla just making these false claims. Like I often complain about the full self-driving thing, autopilot just being a flat-out lie and misleading. And that's why you have all these people that are crashing and burning their Teslas because they're trying to take naps and all this other stupid crap you see on, TikToks and stuff. I mean, it's stupid, and that's partially their marketing to blame. And I think they should face, responsibility for that. But, I mean, like I said, they're just doing those other crazy, awesome things that, it's just kind of a two-sided coin. But I think that Tesla's doing really awesome stuff and moving the ball forward for the entire industry. But we have a couple questions here. So Davis is asking, what do you think of the 2022 Porsche GT3? I think it's a glorious car, 9,000 RPM redline. That's all you need to sell me. But I mean, on top of that, obviously it sounds great. It drives great. Looks great. I've never driven one, but I've driven the old GT3s, and even those are magical. My 997 GT3 review, I had a lot of fun doing that one a couple of years back. But yeah, I mean, the new one's got to be even better. That would certainly have a spot in my dream garage someday if I ever had the money. CM87 says, hey, Matt, where does your last name originate? It actually is a Polish last name. That's where it comes from, is my dad's side. It's all from Poland. So I shortened it for the channel name here. It's longer for my actual last name, but I just keep it short. Also slightly for privacy reasons, but mostly just because no one would remember how to spell my last name probably. So that's why I just shortened it to the Maran for the channel here. But yeah, it's a Polish name, and so that explains my nose, and yeah, very Polish features. But all right, so the Bronco fan says, what is the best starter car for Ford fans? So I mean, honestly, I think probably a Mustang. If you want something sporty, I think that's probably one of the best ways to go. I mean, they're very reliable generally. They're pretty good value. They're great daily drivers. Rear-wheel drive is a little tricky if you're a new driver, especially in the rain and stuff like that. But if you take it easy and you get one of the newer ones with traction control and stability control, I think it'd be a great starter car. Otherwise, Fiesta ST would be great, although those are a little bit more rough as far as their build quality and reliability. But Fiesta ST's, still a very fun little car, and front-wheel drive is a little bit easier to handle. And they're also super cheap, which is great too. And then Focus ST is also a great choice. Those are fantastic. I've reviewed a couple of those over the years, and they're great as well. But yeah, so those are probably my top picks, something on the sporty side for sure. So we have Manuel says, does Ford have to pull out a Raptor R with the GT500 engine to lock horns with the T-Rex? Yeah, so I think that's part of why I think, I think we're quoted it. I think Car and Driver or someone quoted them as saying, once they heard the Hellcat motor was going in the Ram, they're like, well, we got to do a GT500 powered Raptor. And that's kind of what did that. And this is why competition is so good, whether it's with Tesla or anybody. Like Ford would have never done a Raptor R if Ram never did the Hellcat Ram. And so, it always makes it better for all of us. And that's why I always welcome, competition. I wish there was more. I was so sad when the Evo went away because the Evo is what made the STI better. And, now that Mitsubishi isn't, knocking on Subaru's door all the time, the STI, historically they've kind of had very long generations, but we're all like, where is the new STI and the new WRX? And, I think they'd be in a little bit more of a hurry if Mitsubishi had, a top-notch Evo, 13 or 12 or something at this point to, have for us to, keep the ball rolling. But instead it's like, well, what do we compete with? Like a Golf R and Focus RS, which is also now gone. So, it gives them less motivation to move the ball forward. And so because of that, I wouldn't be surprised if you see the new STI come out, even if they finally do the new engine, it'll come out and maybe it'll have, another 20 horsepower, but there's no real competitors. So, why, break your back to try and make it 10 times better if people are already buying them and you don't have any other competitors, just phone it in and, make it, a little bit better and you're good. And, we'll see what they end up doing. I hope they knock it out of the park and do a 400 horsepower STI that, blows away RS3s and all that kind of stuff. But, I'm not holding my breath these days because, like I said, I think the Evo was the best thing that Subaru actually had as a competitor. So, but anyway, other questions here. I go on these little tangents. Yavinder says, hey, Matt, do you think hydrogen cars would be a reality? Toyota has been trying hard with hydrogen technology. I have pretty limited understanding of the whole thing. I think Jason, again, from Engineering Explained, did some really good videos on hydrogen cars. Just actually, I think this past week he did one on the hydrogen race car that Toyota has. It sounds like it's tough because the hydrogen in that form, when you're combusting it, isn't very efficient. So I think, all these things, like you're hearing about e-fuels, and that sounds very promising, but then it's like talking about being like $15 a gallon or $20 a gallon and those types of things where it doesn't make sense for the everyday driver. I think for the masses, electric is going to be their reality unless you're in a very, fringe case. Because I think, in the next 10 years, we will figure out the range thing. We will figure out how to do charging better for those who live in apartments and things like that. I think that's just stuff that takes time. Everyone looks at like 2021. They're like, well, this doesn't work because of this current situation. It's like, yes, but everything's not going to be the same in 10 years. Look at how things have changed in just the past 10 years alone. Look at what, 2011, a Mustang GT was doing 302 horsepower. And now my Bullet sitting in the garage has 480 horsepower and, isn't even the top dog in the lineup. So things can change a lot in 10 years, not only in the automotive world, but also just as far as infrastructure goes and all that kind of stuff. And so everyone's like to saying, the grid, whenever you talk about electric cars, it's like, yeah, well, that'll be upgraded too. It's this whole supply and demand thing of, what comes first, the chicken or the egg. And it's like, you have to kind of, grow with that demand and, you need the demand in order to have the growth and keep up appropriately. But it's this whole balancing act of having the two keep pace with each other that can get kind of tricky. But as far as the hydrogen thing, I think that and e-fuels will be kind of solutions for those of us like myself who will keep my Bullet until the day I die. And, if I have to go fill it up and, pay $20 a gallon for e-fuel in 2035 or whatever, I'll do that. It means I probably won't daily drive it. I probably won't drive it across the country, but I can drive it. And I think that's going to be kind of the best we can hope for in the distant dystopian future is just to actually be able to drive it, And that's still we'll see what happens, but we'll see what insurance companies do. They're part of the reason why muscle cars got killed in the 70s. It was just insurance rates were crazy high. Not only the gas shortages in the 70s, but it was just insurance and stuff. So there's some of that kind of stuff, you have to worry about. There's all kinds of hurdles, but I think hydrogen and e-fuels will be kind of those things for racers and for those who, have the disposable income to, spend $200 to fill up their car, and you have your fun, and, and that's it. But I think most of us will probably have, electric daily drivers, way off in the next 20 or 30 years, unless you're loaded and you don't mind spending, $300 a week on gas or whatever, just to drive, 200 miles or something. But, yeah, who knows? It's always fun to speculate, but honestly, I mean, it's so hard to, even everyone's talking about like 2035, which is like 14 years from now. And it's like 14 years ago, there was no such thing as a smartphone. And look at how things have changed in just those 14 years. I mean, so it's so hard to predict what things are going to be like even by 2035. And even these, aspirations these companies have of, oh, we're going to be fully electric by 2035. It's like, you don't know if you're going to be in business in 2035, let alone, meeting all your goals and stuff. So, who knows what kind of world we'll be in by 2035. So that's why all this stuff is always interesting. Goes in one ear, out the other. It's always one of those things we'll wait and see, what actually happens. And some of the stuff could be lip service as well. Maybe, a lot of companies will just, drag their feet, miss their goals, depending on, again, what the demand is there for the electric and stuff. But Tu Chang, thank you so much for another super chat. He says, what car company do you think is more likely to hold out on electric cars or make a subdivision for gas? My pick is Toyota with Gazoo. Yeah, I think Toyota definitely seems to be one of the ones that, they definitely stressed, even when I was at their headquarters a couple weeks ago, they're like, we're going for electric stuff. They had the BZ4X on display there. That's coming out next year. I mean, they are doing electric vehicles. And, they're going to do more of that. They have a huge rollout of, electrified stuff that they're planning and all that. But I think that, them and a few others, like Mazda and stuff, also realize the reality that, until that grid gets up to par and until those batteries get, to where they need to be, there's no point in planning what your 2035 SUV is going to be like. Plan for the next 5 years, because that's what a product planner is doing anyways. They're like, what do we do for the next 5 years? 5 years from now, everyone's still going to be using gas cars for the most part. Plug-in hybrids will probably be way more common. And that's why you have companies like Toyota doing plug-in hybrid everything. That makes sense. It's a good stepping stone, until the grid gets up to where it needs to be. Because if you only have to charge a little 42-mile range battery in a RAV4 Prime, for example, that's a whole lot easier on the grid than everyone topping off their 500-mile batteries that they use 1% of every day. But they need to have the range in case they need to drive across the country at the drop of a hat. I think Toyota makes the very logical approach of, hey, we'll give you a good, powerful EV with like a RAV4 Prime. You have your 42 miles, which is enough for most people. And, we have a much smaller dent on battery production and mining of all those batteries and all that kind of stuff. And it's a very logical approach. And I think Toyota is kind of approaching this a little more realistically. I think, these other companies are very aspirational, not only with their own, dreams of what a future could be like, but also for what they expect customers to do. Like they're expecting everyone to, be dropping their gas vehicles and, oh, well, GM's just not going to sell gas stuff in 2035. And it's like, okay, well, what about those people that live in the middle of nowhere? What about, all these, people who live in apartment complexes still that don't have a charger or just don't have, where an electric car just doesn't fit, and you have to sell cars to those people. You can't just not sell them. And so Toyota's like, yeah, we'll step up. We'll do that. If GM wants to not sell you a car in 2035 that, is gas powered, we'll sell you a gas powered car, because we realize that, it's not a one size fits all solution. And that's why they'll have electric stuff, but they'll also have the plug-in hybrids and stuff like that, for people who need that flexibility. And I think that that's the realistic way to go about this is, and I think even Europe's seeing this already, where Europe has way bigger incentives and there's a way stronger push with the European brands to go electric. And, they're struggling to get people to want to buy these things, and so, it's all great if you come out with all this stuff by 2035, but if no one wants to buy it in 2035, then your company is sunk. So it's a very, precarious situation to put yourself in with all these companies, going, all in on this stuff and just hoping consumers follow through. Because I think, generally people are adverse to change. They always are with anything in life. And this is going to be no different with the whole switch over to electric. So I think it'll happen eventually, but I don't think it's going to happen as fast as people realize or think it will, at least. But I think, Mazda is another one to answer your original question. Subaru will probably come along with them, since Subaru is also going to kind of hooked up with Toyota, and Subaru's been pretty slow, honestly, with the whole electrified thing, which is kind of funny considering they're so environmentally tied in and stuff. I mean, they do great things with their plants being zero emissions or getting close to that, I think. But as far as their vehicles, it's like, Subaru should be one of the first ones with electric stuff, and instead they're kind of dragging their feet too. Anyway, I'll move on. We have a lot of other super chats here. I'm sorry to keep everyone waiting. But Gabriel Young, thank you so much for the super chat. He says, "Hey Matt, do you think the reason everything is going EV is because of AI coming?" I don't think it has anything to do with, if you mean artificial intelligence. I don't know. I think you could totally have all that tech and infotainment tech in a gas vehicle as well. So I think, the automated, driving stuff, that is another thing. I think that's even further out than the electric switchover. I think you'll see driver electric vehicles happen way sooner than you'll see driverless stuff. I think that is a complete pipe dream that I don't know if that's ever going to fully happen. I think, Tesla kind of did this, half-baked approach to it. But if you actually want to do it safely and stuff, it's one of those tricky things of trying to have the AI figure out how to drive like a human, which means driving imperfectly and understanding human drivers and trying to anticipate what they do. Because, I can't remember, someone said, it'd be super easy. Like, we could have driverless cars tomorrow if every car was driverless, because then you have all the computers talking to each other and it's very easy. But the second you have one human driver on the road, the entire thing falls apart, because then everything's reacting to that and it's a domino effect of everything just falling apart. And so, I don't know if we'll ever get to that point of everyone having driverless capable cars that then everyone switches over to driverless. It's never going to happen, because you have people like me. I'll hop out in my Bullet and pull out on the road. Then all these, driverless cars will lose their mind because they'll see me driving and like not driving perfectly. And so, that kind of stuff will throw everything off. So I don't know. I think that is something that I don't know if we'll see in our lifetime, honestly, but again, who knows what happens in the next 15 years? Things change a lot. But thank you so much again for the super chat. Will W156, thank you so much for the super chat. He says, would you consider doing some track days drag racing? It's really fun. That Mustang would really respond well to a supercharger. I would like to do like circuit racing, like, actual track high performance driving events in the Bullet someday. Drag racing, not so much, just because I get the fun of it. I have drag raced in the past, not like anything like legit, but I've done a few drag strip runs in my Legacy GT Spec B back in the day, and it was fun for sure. It's definitely very exciting. On the Bullet, though, I don't know. It's a lot of abuse on the car. If it was a car I wasn't planning on keeping forever, I'd probably be a little bit more open to doing it. But I know I could still keep it forever and just keep replacing stuff when it breaks. But it's just something I don't have a huge desire to do. I would much rather take it to the track and actually, just do that, because I love track driving. Every time I go on a press trip that allows me to have track time, I always eat it up, because I absolutely love it. And it's so fun to scratch that itch of, like, whenever you're on public roads and you're like so desperately wanting to go faster and you're always stuck behind traffic and you always have to worry about speed limits and stuff, to be out on a track and just be able to like let your, what your education has taught you. I've done so many different driving schools and stuff, and, being able to actually utilize that stuff and, focus on, weight transfer and, trail braking and all these fun things, is a lot of fun. And so I'd love to get more into that. As far as the supercharger, that's something that, I would never do to the Bullet, partially just because I'm, again, very much worried about reliability in it, but also because 480 horsepower on the streets is plenty. On the drag strip, I could see, there being a case for it. And even on a circuit, track, I could see that making sense. But I have no interest in having any more power for, daily driving street car, because then it would make it less fun to me, because then I'd have to even drive it even slower, because I would know, okay, well, I can't even go half throttle anymore, because if I do, I'm doing 100 miles an hour instead of 75 or whatever, so it's like that whole thing. And actually, it's funny, I had a company offer me a free supercharger when I first got the Bullet, and I turned it down, which I know will make a lot of people fall out of their chairs, but I turned down a free supercharger from a good company because I just didn't want to mess with the Bullet. That is how badly I want to keep this thing stocked, that I'm actually turning down free superchargers. So it would be fun. I know it would make the channel probably, be much more popular. Everyone loves seeing project cars and stuff, but making the Bullet into some drag racer would completely ruin it. In my opinion, it's just not me. And I bought the car for me, which I know is, again, totally polar opposite to every other, YouTuber usually that buys cars and they flip them a year later and they do a million mods and make it, completely unrecognizable as what it originally was. And then, ship it off to wherever, and it's the end of it. But I bought the Bullet for me. Maybe someday I'll do, project cars if I have the free time and the space. I have project car ideas. It's just I don't really have much interest in it because it's a lot of headaches. I hate wrenching on cars myself, which I know is probably crazy to say, but I just like driving. That's why I do reviews. I love driving cars. I just love being behind the wheel. Anytime sitting in the garage turning a wrench is time that I wish I was just out on the road driving instead. I know there's a satisfaction to wrenching and building something yourself, not just buying something. And I totally appreciate that. I have a lot of good friends that really love that built, not bought mentality, and I totally get it. But for me, I'd rather just have something I like out of the box and have fun with it. And that's it. I'm just lazy as well. I don't want to be working hard. I just want to walk in, buy it, drive it, have fun, and call it a day. But it's one of those things. Everyone likes something different. Bruce View, thank you so much for the super chat. He says, what are some cars that make you break your neck when you see them? So that's kind of a funny question. It's kind of some stuff that maybe wouldn't excite other people, but Kia Stingers, because they're rare, and I always applaud anyone that bought one. Alfa Romeo Giulias, same reason, rare, and I applaud anyone that bought one of those because they were both fantastic cars that were very underrated, that a lot of people didn't take a second look at. For the Alfa, it's because of the reliability, which is kind of a myth. They're usually pretty reliable actually these days. And the Stinger, because it's a Kia, and a lot of people are like, wow, I can't spend 50 grand on a Kia, forget it. And it's kind of unfortunate because the Stinger's a great car. It'll probably be going away soon because, it didn't sell like crazy. So those are two of the cars that consistently that's like, oh, there's a Giulia or there's a Stinger. And it always gets me excited. Otherwise, sometimes, and if I see any kind of Ferrari, I'm a huge Ferrari fan. So any kind of Ferrari gets me excited. And those are probably the ones that break my neck the most. Usually most other supercars don't faze me anymore because I was around them so much, in the past 10 years. And a lot of them they're a little played out, at least in my area. And, so I appreciate every car and, what it can do and stuff. But I think for me, those probably are the top three. There's some other stuff too that, if I see something really quirky that you never really see, which is now like starting to get to be like, stuff from the 80s. If I see like an 80s hatchback, I'm like, whoa, someone's still driving a Geo Metro? What's going on? Like, so that kind of stuff, kind of excites me just because it's kind of a sentimental thing. And it's also like, whoa, like I respect this person. They're driving around in a beer can whenever there's these, 6,000 pound enormous truck land yacht things driving right next to him. It takes bravery to drive something from the 80s these days with the little safety they had and stuff. But so there's some of that kind of stuff, that I'll get excited about. But classic cars as well. Anything from the 40s to the 60s always gets me excited too. But a lot of the usual stuff, like I could care less if I see a Huracan go down the road or something like that. That kind of stuff doesn't do anything for me anymore. But it's, like I said, the quirky stuff. But thank you so much again for the super chat. So we have Smile Per Mile says, do you think the 718 Cayman GTS 4.0 would be the sweet spot of the 718 range? I think so. I actually have a friend that owns one. He just got it back probably like the beginning of 2021 here, and I haven't reviewed it yet. He's offered it to me, but he's super, super busy with work, so I haven't had a chance to review it yet. But he loves it. He loves it, and I think it totally makes sense. Skip the extra money for the GT4s and the Spider Boxster and stuff, because it's way more money, tiny bit more power, way stiffer suspension that makes it way less comfortable. I think the GTS 4.0 is the sweet spot. 100%. I would totally rock a 718 Boxster GTS 4.0 someday if I could afford one. Those things are sweet. So yeah, I think those are great. Other questions here. We have Heyo says Veloster is pretty rare too. Only seen 3 or 4 around. Yeah, Veloster is another car that I always, any car that I wish people bought more of is a car that I usually always respect and turn my head for. But yeah, that Washington says saw an Aventador SVJ Roadster in Swickley last month. Nice. Yeah, there's a good amount of Aventadors around the area here, and I even just saw a McLaren 720S that passed me by the other day. It was driven by someone who was not using turn signals and actually like was not checking their blind spot. They almost like lane changed into another car behind me, and I was like, "Geez, I'm getting out of this guy's way," because he was not a very good driver. So. Yeah, I see a decent amount of supercars because I live in the North Hills of Pittsburgh. So there's kind of a decent amount of money around there. So that's why some of that stuff doesn't really excite me as much as it used to, maybe 10 years ago. But anyway, Davis Lane, thank you so much for the super chat. He says, should I buy a C7 or a Bullet? So I think that kind of is another one of those things like what are you going for with your sports car? I think they're both very raw and they're both very much fun in very similar ways. They both have awesome naturally aspirated engines, manuals, the very just connected raw experience. I think the C7 feels lighter. The C7 is going to be better in corners. And obviously it's less practical. I mean, you have the bigger hatch, so it's better in that way, but you have no back seat and you're also sitting lower. So, from a visibility standpoint, it's not as good as the Bullet. Bullet's a lot more comfortable too on longer drives. You have softer, cushier seats and, a little bit more, comfort as just the way the car is built. It's also safer if you're someone like me who obsesses over crash tests and things like that, which most enthusiasts don't care about. The Bullet, to me would win over the C7 because you have side curtain airbags, which is something the C7 doesn't have to have because you have the removable roof, and that's their little get out of jail free card for not having any kind of side curtain airbags. You still have the seat mounted side airbags in the C7, but for the best protection, I like having actual side curtain airbags. The Bullet has that. Again, another stupid thing, but after someone who's been have had trees fall on them from above and bashing in my roof and having motorcycles sideswipe me at 50 miles an hour and stuff, I'm a little more worried about safety than most people probably. But so for that reason, I feel a little safer rolling around in the Bullet than I would in a C7. But if it's a weekend car or something, or you're not worried about safety as much as I am, C7 is fantastic. I think especially before these prices got insane with the chip shortage, I think the C7 was one of the best values in the sports car market, period. And I think it probably still is, even with the inflated prices. C7s are still fantastic. And I highly recommend anyone who's considering one. I think they're totally worth it. They're fantastic. And again, it's the last Corvette with a manual, so to probably appreciate at some point. And they're they're fantastic cars. I've loved every single C7 I've ever driven. They're fantastic. So yeah, we have Tracy's asking what's the mileage on the Bullet. It is at 15,650 some miles now. I gave the exact mileage in the weekly update, or in the update here on Wednesday. And I put a few dozen miles on it since then, but yeah, it's slowly gaining miles. If you watch the update, you'll know kind of why that is. But yeah, so it's slowly gaining the miles, but I try and drive it as much as I can. Tu Chang, thank you so much for another super chat here. He says, if Car Trek approached you, would you do it? Also missed a few super chats. Oh, I missed a few super chats. I will definitely go back and do that. I did not want to miss anyone's super chats. I did. Thank you for pointing that out. I very much appreciate that. I did not want to upset anyone that I missed. I will go back and see those. Thank you. I really appreciate that, Tu Chang. But if Car Trek approached me, I don't know if I would do it. Same reason why I'm kind of hesitant to do any kind of TV shows or anything like that. I think part of it is just because I don't want to be away from home super long, especially now with the baby. And also it's one of those things that's really hard to maintain your channel whenever you're off filming something for weeks and months. I mean, it's even hard for me when I'm on a press trip to work ahead 1 week so I have a review going live while I'm flying on a plane somewhere or something. And so, being away for a long period of time doing something like that, I mean, if the pay was there, or if it was something where, obviously with Car Trek, maybe it's something where it's just you're getting the extra exposure and stuff, it'd be fun to do. I would love to do it in a world where, I wasn't having to, if I had an editor and someone to film car reviews for me or something, and I could kind of just go off and do other things and have the channel run itself, that'd be great. But since I'm literally keeping the channel going myself, it's one of those things that I'm usually going to be staying here unless some car channel or, some TV show approached me and offered me huge amounts of money that I could, pay someone to edit the videos while I was away and just try and build up a backlog or something, or, at least have enough money to make up for all the lost income from not posting videos for months on end, something like that maybe. But, yeah, it'd be something. It'd be tough to justify. Anyway, I'm going to get back to these super chats that I missed. I very much apologize to everyone I missed here. So somehow, I don't know why my thing scrolled right past them, but 314 Jeeps and Mopars. Thank you so much for the super chat. He says, GM says they will be fully electric by 2035, but how about the HD diesel trucks? I also see a major constraint on lithium all at once. Yeah, that's another problem, is just the battery production. And the HD trucks, I think that's one of those things. I think they might have said passenger vehicles by 2035. I'd have to go back and check the press release on that. But I'm pretty sure that's what they're talking about. I think the HD trucks and stuff, and obviously like any heavy duty things, that's still going to be something that they're going to have to do gas still and diesel. I mean, that's stuff that you can't just get rid of. Even by then, again, unless we're in some crazy world where Tesla semis are the main semi truck and everyone's just going electric, but I still feel like it's going to be a very uphill battle. But thank you so much again for the super chat. Luco, thank you so much for another super chat that I missed here. He said, what do you do if a press car breaks down? So, thankfully, knock on wood, I have never had a press car break down on me. But yeah, it's something that if something were to break, like I've had other journalist friends that have had vehicles break, and you call up the manufacturer, you have your rep, for that company, and you would, call them up. You'd also call the press fleet company, let them know, hey, it's broken down. They would send a tow truck out, just like any kind of roadside assistance, program would, and they would take it away. And that's it. I don't think there's any kind of restraints on what you can say, so, I mean, if I had a press car breakdown for a reason that, was obvious, then I would say, hey, it broke down because of X, Y, and Z. Or if I was, I would just say whatever is going on. I mean, like Car and Driver, like they had their Giulia Quadrifoglio that broke down, and they were like, yep, it like messed up. And, you just say that stuff because you obviously have to be honest and transparent. The manufacturers aren't going to like it, but, if it breaks, it breaks. Now, if it's abuse or something, that's one thing. If it's like been hammered and you're, doing clutch dumps or something and it's your own fault, then, I mean, that's something that obviously would come back on you. But I mean, as far as, stuff, not every car is perfect. Sometimes you just get a lemon or something like that, I guess, and something would happen. But thankfully, I think it's something they just kind of handle it, and it's not something you have to worry about too much. Long Block, thank you so much for the super chat. He says, what's your expectations and wishes of the new Z? I just hope that they do a better exhaust. Everything that I've heard so far, it doesn't sound great. I mean, I don't know if they do great exhaust for the Q60 Red Sport yet, or if they have, in the past few years it's been out. But I think that could be the one thing about the Z that is underwhelming to people. And I know most people that are buying them are going to mod them anyway, and they'll probably hack off the exhaust on day one, and that's fine. But as someone like myself, I feel like there's a decent amount of people, you're spending $40,000 plus on a sports car. You might not want to tear into it on the very first day, and you might want to just buy it and drive it and not have to mess with stuff to make it something you're actually happy with. And I think there's gonna be a lot of people that test drive the new Z, and if it sounds the way it has been sounding in all the little clips I've heard so far, they might get in it and be like, well, it looks nice and it performs well, but there's no like good sound. And I think these days, especially with sound, getting more and more rare, and that being the defining thing of gas cars, of why you're buying a gas car is for good sound. I really hope the Z has some kind of sweet exhaust that they've kind of been hiding, because it just right now sounds like a Q60. And if it just sounds like a Q60, that's kind of going to be a really strong missing component for the Z. Otherwise, it's going to be great. It'll be 400 horsepower probably for 40 grand. It'll be a great bargain. A ton of people will buy them for that reason alone. The fact that you get 400 horsepower, twin turbo V6, and a manual, that'll sell enough people. All the people who, complain about BRZs and 86s being too slow, they'll go buy their Zs that are, 500 pounds heavier, and they'll be happy, and that'll be fine. But, I think realistically, it's basically going to be a 370Z with the Q60 motor. And if you've test driven a Q60 Red Sport and you've driven a 370Z, you can probably piece together pretty accurately what it's going to be like. Obviously, they'll make suspension changes. There will be some differences, but I think if you've driven those two cars, you can probably get yourself at least 75% of the way into what the driving experience of a Z will be like for the new one. And I think it'll be fun. It'll be great. I'm a little skeptical of, if it's going to actually deliver as much as everyone's hyping it up to be, because there's a lot of hype around it. It's like everyone's like, I'm buying the Z, and we'll see what happens. But I really hope it does well, because one, Nissan really needs a hit. They need a win here, and I hope they get it with the Z. I love the styling. I mean, I love the retro thing. That's a huge weak spot of mine, is retro vehicles. And honestly, if they made a convertible version, I'd even consider owning one at some point, as an extra car on top of the Bullet. But yeah, I'm pretty excited for the new Z. We'll see what happens. It's one of those things, you hear a lot of rumors, you just have to wait and see what actually turns out to be true. Alexon, thank you so much for the super chat as well. Sorry again for the wait. He says, do you think a 2018 Mazda 3 Touring hatchback is a good first car for a teen driver? 100%. My sister has a 2018 Mazda 3. It's not the hatch, it's the sedan, but she has a touring trim. She loves it. It's fantastic. She just wants a little more space. That's why she's going up to probably an SUV here for her next car. But it's been a great car for her. Never had any issues with it. Super reliable. They're very reliable cars, very, safe cars, and very, pretty good on gas, very good power, for that segment of vehicle, very responsive, great handling. I did a review on the sedan, and you can go watch that. I believe it's 2018 as well. If you're curious to hear all my thoughts on the Mazda 3, but I think they're fantastic, really good cars, and definitely be great for a first-time driver. Okay, so I think I caught up with all the super chats. If not, someone please notify me if there's one that I missed, because I definitely don't ever want to overlook a super chat. But I think we're up to them. And New Media is commenting here, saying, I'm sure there's a bunch of aftermarket companies that would be willing to work with Nissan for some kind of active exhaust. Not sure why they wouldn't. Yeah, I'm sure there'll be definitely lots of aftermarket stuff. I just, it's nice. That's one thing I love about the Bullet, is having a switch. I literally have a switch, and I have 4 different exhaust modes. That's what people want these days. I don't know. I mean, at least most people, it seems like in the Mustang community, love the active exhaust. And even if it was $3,000 more, like I would pay $3,000 to Nissan for a 4-mode active exhaust before I pay $3,000 to, G-Ready or HKS or somebody to do an exhaust with 1 mode or even a dual mode exhaust, and having some little non-OEM little switch you got to play around with to turn it on and off, and all these other aftermarket solutions, which are not nearly as polished as what you get with an actual OEM application. But I mean, we shouldn't expect anything different. They look at the GTR. You're paying $120,000. You still don't have an active exhaust with those. So I mean, there's definitely no way the Z is going to have anything like that. Unfortunately, I wish they would, but if they're not bothering with it on the GTR, where it's a no-brainer, then I think the Z is definitely out of luck there. So aftermarket companies are going to have a field day, though. So maybe they did a deal with Nissan where they're like, hey, like we'll pay you to like not do a good exhaust on the new Z, and then that way we can all make millions on the aftermarket stuff, and we'll give you a cut or something. Maybe they worked out an arrangement or something, because I just make a good sounding car. Again, I'm not going to judge it until I actually hear it in person and stuff, but it just doesn't seem like it's going to be amazing. And that's why I love the Veloster N. That's why I'm excited about the Elantra N. It's not rocket science. People want the crackles and pops and the loud stuff, and the option to turn that off if they don't feel like it. And I think all the companies doing active exhaust, they understand and they get that. Tu Chang, thank you so much for another super chat. He says, I feel like the way the electric grid could grow is if battery manufacturers made a uniform format and we could just have battery swap stations. Yeah, I mean, that would be fine for the road trippers and things like that. It's just stuff like, that would still, it's never going to be as easy as filling up a tank of gas. I think that's the one thing with hydrogen that was promising, is it was that easy. It took a little bit longer. I think the average hydrogen fill up is like 8 to 10 minutes or something, but that was really, if you wanted a gas experience without gas, hydrogen is the way to go. And I think, a lot of companies are still trying to push for that, but I think there's still a lot of apprehension from people with hydrogen vehicles, and the tech is just still not quite there. And it's one of those things, again, it follows the consumer, and the consumers are Tesla. And, they defined that electric was cool, not hydrogen, electric. And so even though electric might make less sense, I think that's kind of what's driving Toyota and Honda and even GM and them crazy, is they're like, hydrogen is probably the way we should actually go in the future. But, everyone says, oh yeah, but the Tesla's electric. That's cooler. I want an electric car. And because of that, the consumer drives that change. And so that's why we're going to electric, even though it might only be really a Band-Aid in the long term. I think in 100 years, if there are still cars we're not flying around in spaceships or something, I feel like they will probably be hydrogen eventually. We'll get there because I think it makes the most sense from a long-term standpoint. But in the meantime, I think the battery thing is just, what's cool. And again, that was all thanks to Tesla. But the swap stations, I think I can't remember a company, someone was toying with the idea of like, hey, let's just swap your battery and try and make that an actual solution. It's just, even if they're very easy, you still got to put the car up on a lift to do it. I mean, even if you had some kind of automated thing at a Pep Boys or something, it's still, I feel like would be a little bit tricky. Maybe someday they could automate it enough so it'd be as fast as a gas change, filling up with gas or something. But it would be a cool idea, especially again for those who want that. It's just you'd have to build in all the cars to have that and have that unified battery thing like you're talking about, which I feel like is never going to happen because they engineer these batteries to all work differently. And if you're swapping batteries for refueling, what if your battery is super beat and you got tons and tons of dead cells in it or something, and then someone else gets your crappy battery and stuff. I feel like it'd be kind of complicated, unfortunately. Even though it could have some promise, I think it's just there's no way that would work because people just don't like other people's stuff, and they're like, well, mine was better, even if it wasn't. It could be that whole thing. So I think there'd be a lot of hurdles there. But I feel like hopefully someday there'll be some type of solution to make the batteries a little bit better or faster charging or whatever. But Dom, thank you so much for a super chat. He says, do you think driverless vehicles will ever be a law? I foresee no gas engine manufacturing, then no gas engines on the road, and then driverless cars only. I think driverless cars, kind of like I was talking about earlier, I think it's going to be really tough to do unless everything is driverless, which is one of those things, someone's going to be the last holdout. I mean, you're never going to have 100% adoption of anything. I mean, there's still, a small percentage of people that, don't use electricity or don't have running water. I mean, that was 100 years ago. So, I mean, it's one of those things. I don't think we're ever going to get to that. And so unless the AI gets really so good that they can react to humans perfectly or good enough that it's, at least the same margin of safety as another human driver, maybe you can mix them in with, with other, driver vehicles. I think the only thing that'll make driver vehicles illegal and make everything driverless would be insurance. If they start telling people, well, hey, if you get this driverless car and you never drive it and you always have it drive you, we'll give you 90% off of your car insurance. That kind of stuff could then cause, again, a consumer driven thing that then there's just no demand for driver cars. And then, you'll have companies that are like, well, if you want to drive your car, you can, but it's going to cost you $10,000 a month or whatever, the crazy, then they would just price it out. But I think laws would then just make people mad. Usually when you try and force people into things, it doesn't work. So I think usually, like I said, in the 70s, that's what made muscle cars go away then was insurance rates was one of the big reasons. And so, that could kind of be the only way I think the driver cars will end is insurance. That could kill it single-handedly, but otherwise, but even then, you'll still have those rich people driving their Lambos like maniacs that are fine paying 10 grand a month for car insurance or whatever. They already pay 10 grand a month for private car insurance, but at that point, they're fine paying $1 million a month for car insurance. If you're that rich enough, there will always be someone that, will hold out, but so I don't think there'll be a law about it. I think it'll just be insurance, and the rich people that can afford it will be the ones that get to do it. Kind of like horse riding. Not that you have to be rich to have a horse or a horseback ride, but it's kind of that kind of thing of it'll just get to a point where it doesn't make sense for most people, I think, anymore. But yeah, we'll have to see. I think, again, the whole switch over is going to take way longer than most people realize. Even the gas engine, is going to take a long time. And the one statistic I always tell people is the average age of a car on the road today is 12 years old. So, I mean, you do the math here. And I mean, it's like, so 12 years from when electric cars are actually cheap and everyone wants them, go from that point, which is probably another 15 years already. And then you add 12 years onto that for them to be cheap enough to be 12-year-old used cars, to be the average age of a car on the road. And then that is when you will see mass widespread adoption, is when they're $5,000 cars that are actually good and people want, that are, all over the place and common enough that they're actually cheap and disposable. And that's going to be a long, long time. So I don't think it's happening even by 2035 or anything like that. I would add 12 years onto that and say maybe in the mid 2040s, you have something to worry about. we got a long time before the mid 2040s, so I think we don't have to worry too much, for the next 20 or so years at least. We can still kind of breathe easy, even though headlines might be scary and, something that, we're not all super into. I think we still have a lot of fun times to drive gasoline powered vehicles. Fastline says, have you seen the all-new Honda Civic on the road for 2022? I actually saw my first one today, funny enough, you ask. Just driving out in the Bullet, and yeah, saw a new Civic. So it looks pretty good. Honestly, that's actually the first time I've seen one in person, because we have no auto shows currently, and then they just kind of did a little private viewing for the new Civics that a few journalists got invited to, but I was not one of the ones that got invited to that. So yeah, first time I saw it was on the road. That's just one of the rare instances where they actually sell the vehicle in dealers like soon after they reveal it, which usually never happens. Usually I have it as a press vehicle way before I ever see it at dealers. But Honda's been doing that recently. I don't know if it's the same drive, but in this week I saw the new Civic, and then I also saw my first TLX Type S in person, just sitting on a dealer lot. And that's another vehicle I'm still waiting to review. And so I actually am having the Civic coming on Wednesday, and then I have the following week I'm getting the TLX Type S finally, and so I'll be able to review that here soon. But it's kind of funny, those two cars I actually saw out in the open just normally before I ever actually saw them in person, which is kind of wild. But other stuff, like I actually saw my first RAV4 Prime in the wild like a couple of weeks ago, and I reviewed that a year ago. So it just kind of depends on the rollout and stuff. But yeah, I think the new Civic looks really good. I know some people think it's boring looking. I think it's a home run. I much prefer the styling on the new one over the old one for sure. But yeah, it sounds like a bunch of you. Fastline saying he saw one, Jonah saw one. So yeah, they're really popping up a lot. I guess a lot of people are really excited for the new Civic, and they were like lined up, like ready to buy them. So that's great. I'm glad they seem to be selling really well so far. Jonah says he's also seen a lot of new Tucsons. Yeah, funny enough, I've been seeing a bunch of new Tucsons as well. I went to go grab some takeout last night, saw a silver Tucson. It's actually one of the base models. I was kind of curious to check it out because I haven't seen a base model yet with all their extra knobs and actual volume knobs and stuff. That was kind of cool. But yeah, and then I saw a red Tucson, brand new Tucson today again. I'm like starting to see those everywhere. So Civics and Tucsons, they're taking over here. It's kind of funny. Yeah, Reginald said he saw 4 of them in Louisiana. I guess there's no chip shortages there. They're churning out the Tucsons and the Civics. So it's kind of funny. We're all seeing them all over the place. That's great. Tu Chang, thank you so much for another super chat, man. He says, different idea. IQ integrated cars, wireless charging. Oh, like the Qi, gotcha. Wireless charging while you're driving on certain roads or parking spots, although imagine the fee to use it. Well, I think Audi, there's been a few that have tried to do the inductive charging with charging spots. But I mean, obviously that would just be insanely expensive to build, a parking garage or something that has enormous wireless chargers under every spot. Or I guess they'd have, designated spots like you're, kind of talking about, or, roads. And I think I've read articles over the past few years about all this kind of stuff where there was an idea of having like an HOV style lane that had inductive charging. So you could just have it charging while you're driving and never run out of a charge and just drive until you fall asleep or whatever, and just have a dedicated lane for that. Also insanely expensive. I mean, look at how much of a struggle it is just to fix potholes, and bridges are crumbling left and right. We can't even fill a pothole in a reasonable amount of time, let alone, have any kind of inductive charging on the roadways. It would be a wonderful dream. It just, we'd have to have way, way more money or, for infrastructure than is even possible to have. I think, honestly, even in a perfect world, it'd be really, really tough. Maybe I could see that being something in 100 years, that we have, or something in this far off future where that kind of stuff is insanely cheap. If inductive chargers or some type of new technology makes that as cheap as concrete, then those are the type of developments you need to get to before it'll ever happen. Because, money is the thing that keeps everything cool from happening. It's one of those things like, that's a great idea, except no one wants to spend the money for it. And it's just the way it goes because there's only so much money in the world. And, even if billionaires all donated, to fix the highways, we still would probably have issues with the highways and stuff. So it's just one of those things. I think it's just going to be a long time, but it would be awesome. I mean, obviously those types of ideas people have been thinking about, people want that stuff to happen. It's an uphill battle, but it's fun to dream about what the world could be like. Or you could be like Ford. They had like one of the auto shows, they're like dream for the future, was everyone just riding around on bicycles in these like parks and stuff. And it's like, I don't know. It's funny that Ford, it seems like they would love to one day get to a point of not even having cars, which is kind of bizarre because I feel like I'm always going to want to drive. Like, I just love the feeling of having a steering wheel, steering a car, hitting the pedals. There's nothing like it. Luco, thank you so much for another super chat. He says, how do you not get bored with your daily driver? Feels like no matter what, like a year or so, I get bored with my new vehicle or just stop liking it. Well, for me, I honestly have a new daily driver every single week, basically. I mean, the Bullet, that's why it sits sometimes. I think before I started driving it here in June, I think it sat for 6 weeks or something because I always had a press vehicle. And so it's hard to get bored of a car when you drive it once a month. It kind of is always fresh and like, ooh, this is exciting, especially whenever a lot of the press vehicles are crossovers and things that aren't as exciting as a 480 horsepower manual transmission, V8 powered rear wheel drive thing. The Bullet is always a special experience. So I think that certainly helps. If the car in my driveway was Honda Civic or something normal, I'd probably get bored with it a lot quicker. But yeah, I'm also a very sentimental person. So I regret every single car that I've sold. I miss everything. I romanticize about my memories with those vehicles. Even the Mini, which was very flawed, left me actually stranded, left me paranoid about it breaking down more. I still miss that thing and wish it didn't let me down. Like, I still am like, maybe if I would have kept it and just did 1 or 2 more fixes, it would have been good. And it's one of those things, I'm just always stupidly sentimental about stuff. But so yeah, I feel like that's just a personality thing. I know a lot of people that, they can't keep a car for very long. They just get bored. They always want to try something new. I get that. I think, again, I scratch that itch by trying something new every week. And so I don't really have, any reason to want to get something new because I just have to wait a week and I get to try something else new. And so actually, if you're someone who likes trading over cars all the time, try and get into the car review world. It'll definitely definitely help you out and help you feel better about your driving situation there. Anthony Greco, thank you so much for your question here. He says, hey, it's been a while catching up with your YouTube channel. I've thought about the car community. How do you feel about something less hot that works versus social media's expectations? I think so. If you're talking about like sporty vehicles and stuff, as far as like something that's like the hot new car of the summer versus something just as, like, reliable. I think hopefully I'm understanding your question properly. I feel like, it's one of those things, everyone has different personalities, right? Like, there's some people that they prefer to have a daily driver that's boring, gets good gas mileage, gets from point A to point B, and then they have their fun car that they savor on the weekends. And there's other people that are like, well, I want to have fun every day, and they daily drive their sports car, whatever, have a blast, and and it's all good with all that. But yeah, so I appreciate that you're following up on the channel and stuff. I know a lot of people have been saying like they've been subscribed, but for some reason, like the channel just disappeared and it didn't pop up in their sub feed for years. And they're just like, they thought I just dropped dead or something, I guess. And now they're like, holy crap, this dude's still making videos. And so now they're rediscovering the channel again, which is great. Yeah, the car community is definitely something that's always changing as well. And it's kind of interesting to even see how the car review space has changed in just, the past 5 years, honestly, and how much different it was, than from when I started. It's now been almost 9 years I've been doing car reviews, and it's kind of crazy how that whole world has changed as well. But yeah. And I see, excuse me, your follow-up question. You said, I've tried avoiding social media because I've had a tough history with vehicles where I've been on a downgrade slope of performance. Yeah, I mean, the thing with social media, especially on Instagram and things like that, like there's always gonna be someone who gives you crap for your car and it's not fast enough, it's not special enough. Even with my Bullet, I get all these people that are like, oh, when are you gonna trade for a Shelby? And it's like, I wouldn't trade for a Shelby if you paid me, because I just love the Bullet. I love Steve McQueen and the movie and all that kind of stuff. I mean, there's just sentimental things. And so I think the whole social media thing with, your car and stuff, buy what you want for you. I mean, it's the same thing. Like I said, everyone keeps telling me, why do you sell the Bullet? Trade it for something else and flip cars every year and build 1,000 horsepower, track cars and all this kind of stuff. And it's just like, that's not me. I know that's hugely successful for a lot of people, but you got to do what you got to do. Cause at the end of the day, everyone sees your highlight reel on social media and they can judge all they want. But like, you're the one that lives with your car. And if you're, if daily driving 1,000 horsepower car with a stage 4 clutch is fun to you, like go for it. But you're the one that has to live with that. And so buy a car for you, mod a car for you, do what you want to do. Everyone's going to have an opinion about everything in life. We saw it in the past year and a half here, all the crazy stuff that went on in multiple parts of life and stuff. I mean, everyone's got an opinion about everything. Everyone's got their facts and stuff. So you just gotta do what's best for you and, get the car you enjoy. Don't worry about everyone else. And that's why I tell people too, if like everyone's, obsessed with 0 to 60 times, and I'm like, go buy a Tesla if you care about 0 to 60 times. Like, any average Joe or Karen in their Model 3, long range will probably smoke most sports cars at red lights. So you're trying to have this competition of being the fastest guy on the road still, like, forget it. Like, that battle's already been lost. Like, just buy something for the fun of it. Don't worry about having 1,000 horsepower. And just enjoy the vehicle. And that's why I love good sounding cars and that kind of stuff. And that's why I'd rather go, slower in a Veloster N than faster in a Nissan Z that's, near silent. That's just, for me, I think it's just more fun. But yeah, so it's all very interesting. Social media is definitely something I'm not in love with. That's part of why, like, our little baby girl here, we're not going to have any kind of social media presence for her. Haven't been posting about her or anything like that. It's just, social media is definitely a tough place to be. And, it's very detrimental for most people's, self-esteem and things like that. It's tough. But yeah, a lot of people, I see comments saying social media is not good in general. I agree. Honestly, if it wasn't for this channel, I would probably ghost off social media. I do Instagram, all kind of stuff, because I do enjoy sharing stuff every once in a while. But as many of you know, if you follow me on Instagram, I very rarely post. I don't post a whole lot, just because I'm like, I don't want to have my phone out. Like, if I'm, hanging out with my daughter, or I'm driving my Bullet, or I'm living my life, I don't want to have my phone in my hand. I want to like look at what I'm doing and like enjoy that instead of trying to, share it with everybody else. Now, obviously, sharing my experience with driving cars is my job, but again, that is to help you guys, give you guys advice on cars, not showing off, hey, look how cool I am because I'm driving in this car this week and it's this fast and blah, blah, blah. Like, that's not why I do this. I know some others, maybe that is why, but for me, it's not that. So I would be more than happy to drop social media if it wasn't required to help you guys see the videos and kind of promote the channel and stuff. Cause I'm definitely burned out with social media. That is for sure. But anyway, Tu Cheng, thank you so much for another super chat here. He says, we say it's hard to do the Qi thing. Apple says, hold my wine. 1 year later, Samsung, hold my beer. Dodge Southern accent, hold my moonshine. Yeah, it's, I mean, with the phones, it's a little bit easier because you can't have that standardized thing. And it's also, it's not quite as high of a stakes thing if your phone dies versus your car dying. It's a little bit of a, not as big of a deal. But I mean, I would love to see some type of good charging solution. I think that would certainly help a lot of people, since again, everyone in this country has the mentality that they need to drive 1,000 miles on, their vehicle in one sitting. And, I think my buddy Jason Edging explained, he did such a good job illustrating this with his 1,000-mile road trip video in his Tesla he just posted a couple months ago. It's like, you have to stop and go to the bathroom anyway when you're on a road trip. You have to stop and eat every few hours anyway. So like, why everyone's obsessed with driving 600 miles in a sitting, like nobody actually does that. Everyone does stop for 10 or 15 minutes. And so, yeah, you maybe have to sit there for 5 more minutes than what you normally would in a Tesla. But with the supercharging stations being so good, it's really not a big deal. I think a lot of people like to, play it up, make it a lot worse than it actually is. It's not that bad. All right, so we're going off topic here a lot, which is great. I enjoy rambling. Hopefully you guys enjoy the little mini rants as well. Newt Media agrees social media is a bad thing, I think. Yeah, it's really gotten to be so much less fun. I don't know if you guys even saw Instagram now. They're starting to do a change where they're going to do suggested posts in your regular feed. So like, even if you're like, I don't want to see that stuff, or, they have the explore page still, but they're going to now make it harder for you to actually see the people you're following, because they want to stuff in suggested posts instead, because they said that most people didn't get through their whole feed. So they just want to start suggesting stuff instead. And it's like Instagram, when it started, was like, hey, I follow 5 people. I see those 5 people's posts in chronological order, and then I'm done. And it was like, oh, cool, I actually care about this person. And now it's like all this other random crap thrown in. And now Instagram's going to make it even worse. Like the second Facebook bought Instagram, it just went downhill real fast. But that's a whole nother side rant. But yeah, social media, not great. It's all, yeah, it's just a highlight reel. It's always going to make you feel bad about yourself because everyone else has highlight reels and you're not seeing the real life. And it just makes you really hard on yourself. Dom, thank you so much for their super chat, though. He says, where are you at with doing personally owned car reviews? I know COVID has put a damper on things. So I am now actually getting back slowly to doing personally owned vehicles. Again, I'm so swamped now with the press vehicles that are going to be showing up here that usually it just keeps me so busy, and I have such a long backlog that I don't really have many scheduling slots to actually have a privately owned vehicle to review. As long as the weather stays good, I am planning to do another GT350 review here in about a week or so, and it's going to be the 2021, so it's a newer one. I did the previous, the actual 2016 original GT350, but I'm going to be doing a 2020, which has the suspension changes. Supposedly it handles a lot better, and I'm excited because it's just been a long time since I've been in one, and I thought it'd be a fun one to do. So I am doing that. So I'm slowly getting back into it, but again, with the new baby and stuff, I'm more hesitant to leave home. I'm actually turning down more press trips now, and I'm getting pickier with even those because I don't want to be away from home as much, even though that's fun to, fly to new places and, be wined and dined and drive brand new cars and do brand new videos right there on the embargo date for you guys and stuff. But I think with a lot of that, I'm even going to just wait for them to show up in the press feed. If it's not an amazing car, like I will travel. I'm doing the GR86 launch. And so stuff like that where I know it's worth it, I will travel. But for stuff that's not going to probably do huge amounts of views and have a ton of interest from you guys, I'm just going to be like, yep, I'll just wait. And everyone else can do their, first reviews all on the same day, but I'll probably just wait it out because I just would rather be at home here because it's just so much fun being at home with our little daughter. She is just awesome. I'm obsessed with her. And so I would much rather just be here and review cars from my driveway instead. It's a lot easier too, a lot less tiring. But I am hoping to get into more privately owned vehicles, especially if it's stuff within an easy driving distance that I can just do a day trip real quick and go out and film something and come back. I would like to get into that some more. As now that everything has been better, with COVID and stuff like that, it's something I definitely am open to doing more of now again. But yeah, thank you again for the super chat. I see we got a couple more here. So Calvin, thank you so much for the super chat. And he says, currently 09 Civic, one of Veloster N. Thoughts? Do it. If you can afford it comfortably, do it. Veloster N is awesome. I love them. I think that especially if you're coming out of a Civic, you're going to like the front wheel drive driving dynamics still and stuff. Veloster N is so much fun. I wholeheartedly support that decision. I think it would be, it's just awesome. You can watch, either the DCT review that I just posted a couple months ago, or you can watch the manual transmission one that I reviewed a couple years ago. Either way, you can't go wrong. They're fantastic. I prefer the manual, but the DCT is great too if that fits your lifestyle better. But yeah, so thank you so much again for the super chat. Broly, thank you so much for the super chat. He says, family car, 2022 Civic Type R or Golf R. Thank you, Matt. Thank you for the super chat. So when you say 2022 Type R, I'm guessing you mean the new next generation version, which is a complete, I don't think anyone really knows. Even if it's carryover engines, it's kind of hard to say, what they will do otherwise as far as handling and stuff. Or the Golf R. I think, for a family car, it's safe to say if it's based on the current, the brand new Civic hatch, the Type R will have way more space. The Golf R is, not a very large hatch. So for that reason, I would probably say Civic Type R. If you even compare the current gen Civic Type R to a Golf R, way more storage space in the Civic Type R. So if you're hauling strollers, I don't know what point of family life you're at, but if you need to haul a bunch of stuff, Type R is going to be way better. And it's also a bigger back seat, even in the old generation. New one will probably be even better, but you have more back seat space. And I would actually argue that the newest Civic Type R, like the one I reviewed last year, that with the softest suspension setting probably is actually a smoother ride too. So you might actually have less complaints from your passengers because it'll be a smoother ride than the Golf R, I think, too. Golf R feels a little nicer inside with the materials and stuff, but if you have kids and stuff, it's probably not going to be a huge concern. The front seats are really aggressive for a daily driver, so if you have a significant other that isn't super into a super sporty car, the side bolsters that are like basically like cliffs on the sides of the Type R seats, like that might get old getting in and out of those seats because they are definitely very aggressive there in the front. So that is the only possible thing that might throw you off a little bit there. Otherwise, I think Civic Type R would be my pick over the Golf R personally, especially as a family vehicle. So hopefully that helps. Thank you again for the super chat. Tu Chang, thank you so much for another one. He said, last one. Thank you so much for all the super chats. I appreciate it, man. He says, Matt, since you review cars on public roads and stuff, do you have any Karen stories? So I guess you mean like people complaining about me speeding or anything like that. I actually don't have anything. I mean, because honestly, whenever I do my accelerations, I do my one acceleration, a couple of giggles, and then I slow down. And, when I'm going around the corners and stuff, I maybe go a little bit quicker than average traffic, but, I'm never reckless and I'm always very responsible. And so that's very important to me. And so I don't think I ever really do anything that really upsets anyone too much. So yeah, I've never had anyone like yell at me. I'm trying to rack my brain if I've ever had any like negative feedback while I've been reviewing something. I don't think I've ever had any issues, honestly. Knock on wood, never had any tickets or anything. I did get pulled over once doing a review, and that was whenever I was reviewing the G63, the G-Wagon actually, and I was in Washington State, and I wasn't even going crazy. It wasn't like during the acceleration or anything. I was just like cruising down the road, and I had a Corolla on my tail, like tailing me super aggressively. So I actually like sped up a little bit for that. And then a cop was just coming the other way and spun around and decided to pull me over, not the Corolla. Anyway, he, was like, I pulled you over? I was like, oh, I know I was going over the speed limit a little bit. He's like, yeah. And I just explained, I was like, look, the guy was just tailing me. I'm like, I'm just, driving this. And I actually explained it was a press vehicle. Obviously it was actually during one of the AVA events. But the cop was super cool. He actually was like, you look familiar. And I was like, oh yeah. He's like, yeah. Did you used to have like a Subaru or something? And I was like, yeah, I was a Super Darks fan. And he's like, oh yeah, that's awesome. And he was like super cool. And I was like, I actually have an STI myself. And we actually had a nice little conversation there on the side of the road. He handed me his business card. He's like, if you ever have any issues out here, let me know. And then he actually came back. They figured out where we were staying at the hotel. It had all these cool cars lined up. And him and I think one of his other cop buddies came by, and they were talking cars with us for like an hour. And it was super cool. They were the nicest cops. It was awesome. And so, yeah, I was very thankful. He just gave me a warning with the speeding. And that was the only time I've ever been pulled over. I got pulled over one other time back in college, but it wasn't doing reviews. It was just driving to college. And that one I did get a ticket for, but that was at this point probably like 11 or 12 years ago. So it's been a long time, but yeah, so thankfully never had any other issues, but thank you so much again for all the super chats, Tu Chang. Case Nino, thank you so much for the super chat. He says, Matt, what do you think of the 2021 TLX S-Type? Why do they make you choose between the A-Spec package and Tech package? You can't get both. So yeah, as far as that you're talking about the regular TLX, the Type S I think is great. I'm very excited. We're going to be reviewing one here in about 2 weeks, and I'm excited to try it out and see what it's like. It is a little bit frustrating they're keeping those two packages separate on the regular TLX, and I think that's kind of why they have the PMC editions. I don't know if they're going to do a PMC of the regular TLX anytime soon, but that always ticks those two boxes together. But I don't know why they don't do that, because I do wish I like the A-Spec stuff, but I would love to have full leather and actually have the open pore wood and the adaptive dampers and things like that, and so it's kind of unfortunate that, they keep those two packages separate, but I guess it's just to make it easier as far as, production stuff. I have no clue, but it's a little bit unfortunate that they do that, but I think the Type S kind of gives you a little bit of both. So, I know it has a little more of the A-Spec stuff than the Tech package stuff, but maybe someday they'll do some type of, Tech package on top of the Type S, and then that way you can actually have some of the nicer stuff. I don't know. I think they're kind of going to do that with the MDX as well for those people who actually want full leather in the MDX Type S. I think they're going to probably offer that there at least. But But yeah, I don't know why they do that, honestly, but I'm excited for the TLX. That's one vehicle I've been anxiously awaiting to review. So hopefully gonna be able to do that again here very, very soon. So we have a couple more super chats here. Big RR64, thank you so much for the super chat. He says, I actually bought a Fox Mustang from a review you did years ago. You made it look so much fun. I had to try it. That old 5-speed is a blast to drive. I bet it is. That was a very interesting review to film. That was awesome. I mean, that was a very raw experience, but it was even more raw than I was expecting because it was like really heavy clutch and like, I mean, that was a car that, like, it's one of those cars you actually have to drive it. Like my Bullet, you can be pretty stupid in it and you'll probably be safe. But that Fox, I mean, it would totally bite back if you were being stupid. And it really is rewarding with that. The comfort, though, in it, obviously, I'm spoiled by modern vehicles, but, it definitely wasn't, very comfortable car to drive, in my opinion. I'm sure that's something you can get used to. And I'm sure you've gotten used to that now that you've owned one. But I'm glad the review helped you. That's exactly, again, why I do this, to help people find cars they're going to love. And I'm so glad that video helped you out. Yeah, they're very cool cars. And that's another car that I think is going to start appreciating big time. I know they've already started going up in value, but I remember when Fox body Mustangs were like worthless. And now I think there's really, a strong following for those. And so hopefully you'll have an appreciating asset on your hands here if you don't already. So it's awesome. Congrats on the Fox Mustang. Dom, thank you so much for another super chat. He says, I still want you to review my 2018 Accord 2.0 manual. I know it's not the most exciting, but I'm willing to drive to Pittsburgh. If you are willing to drive, I don't remember. I remember you offered it. I don't remember exactly where you're from, but if it's not too far of a drive, I would still love to try out a manual 2.0 Honda Accord, because that's one vehicle that never made it to my hands, at least in the press fleet. And Honda didn't have very many of them in the press fleet, I don't think. But I would love to try that out because I think it's still very promising. I know everyone just says it just needs a limited slip diff, but I'd still love to try it regardless because I think it'd be a blast. If you are willing to drive to Pittsburgh, I mean, I can even meet you halfway if it's somewhere just so you're not driving quite as far. I'm definitely willing to drive, a few hours to make it a little bit easier on you. Definitely send me an email and we can work it out. I'd love to, give it a try. And like I said, try and slowly do some more of these car reviews if it's, a little bit of a shorter drive and nothing super, super far. Because I have a lot of people that have offered me vehicles from all over the country and they've just been waiting years because it's like, when will I be in Montana and have free time to do reviews? Like, I have no clue, but I always save those messages. And, if I ever do find myself on a spot, I know I have a bunch of cars I can review that I've been waiting to review for a long time. And so I appreciate anyone that ever offers their vehicles. It's very kind. And so, yeah, definitely let me know and we can work it out. But thank you again for the super chat and for the offer. Luke, thank you so much for another super chat. He says, I want a Veloster N, but potholes scare me. So throw out the factory wheels and go smaller wheels, bigger sidewall, good to go. I know a lot of people, that's a very popular mod. And I would, if I had a Veloster N 100%, I would immediately get rid of the stock wheels on those, rubber band tires and go for something with some more sidewall. That's one thing I love about the Bullet. Nice thick sidewall for these Pittsburgh potholes. So I honestly, if that's the only thing holding you back, 100%, just budget in another, $1,500 for wheels and tires or something. And, even if you find a used set of wheels somewhere and, you should be good to go. I think that would totally fix that problem and actually give you a little bit of a better ride as well. So it's a win-win. Gabriel, thank you so much for the super chat. He says, hey, Matt, I came from a 2019 Kia Soul Turbo and I traded it in for the 2021 Kia Stinger GT2. Do you think I should have waited for the 2022 Kia Stinger? It'd be cool for that, better exhaust, supposedly that they have, but the audio clips that I've heard, it doesn't sound drastically different. So you might have made the right call not waiting. I know the interior is a little bit nicer, which is something depending on, your preferences, whether or not that's important to you. But, I think you probably got a really good deal on the Stinger, and that's one thing you might not get as good of a deal on the 2022. So I feel like you made the right call. And again, with the crazy values these days, if you want to, swap it for 2022, you might be able to do that with, not as much of a financial setback as you normally would have had in the past. So, congrats on getting the Stinger. Excellent choice. Again, I feel like that's a very underrated car. I wish more people bought them. They're fantastic. And so, yeah, thanks for buying one, honestly. But I think you'll be great with your 2021. It's the same power, and the bigger screen and stuff would be nice. But not a big deal. And again, you can always upgrade down the road. In the meantime, you lived in the now, you got it. And I think there's a lot to be said for that, because none of us are guaranteed tomorrow. Drive what you want, get what you can afford now, and have fun and enjoy it while you can. There's always gonna be something better around the corner. There's always something new, especially covering cars, all these years. There's always a new version. There's always something they're adding. That's how they keep these cars fresh. You just kind of got to get to a point where you're like, all right, I'm happy with this the way it is, and just go with that. G-Town Bulls 5, thank you so much for the super chat. He says, thoughts on the Audi B5 S4. I am rusty on my generations of the S4s, but I think all generations of the S4 are pretty cool. Aside from, I think is the second gen, the one that has the bi-turbo V6 that is very unreliable from what I've seen. But those ones are like the late 90s ones, I think. But I think all versions of the S4 are pretty sweet. I mean, it's a great combo, especially like I reviewed, I think it was a 2006 S4 with the manual and the V8. It's like that V8 was indestructible for one. Those things are super reliable, which is rare for an Audi. And you had the manual and all-wheel drive. Awesome combo that, again, you're not going to find these days for sure. And another future classic, I think. And, those things are awesome. I think the S4 has always been a pretty solid, very cool car, especially for those who've been, again, wanting all-wheel drive before BMW added it to the M3 and stuff like that. I think the S4 has always been really cool. So, yeah, good cars for sure. Thank you again for the super chat. The B5 was the bi-turbo 2.7, Media says. Yeah, so that one, I wish you all the best of luck if that's what you have. Man, when I worked at an Audi dealership, and this was mid 2000s, like 2006 to 2011. Man, the amount of blown up S4s with that bi-turbo V6. I mean, those things. Yeah, it wouldn't be for me, but I have very low tolerance for reliability. A lot of other people, if you don't mind having stuff that's not perfect reliability, go for it. But it wouldn't be my pick, but I respect anyone for any car. Like I said, I had a Mini, which was very unreliable, so I totally sympathize with the whole, owning an unreliable vehicle thing. But anyway, just gonna move on. But I'd love to see it though if you have any pictures. They are very cool looking. I think that's one of the cooler looking S4s in my opinion. Just maybe with a motor swap or something, they'd be more fun car in my opinion. But other questions here. So we have Mari says, should I get a Mazda RX-7 for a weekend car? I love the design, the pop-up, the simple design of the rotary engine, and the sound of the rotary engine, and highly tunable. RX-7s are awesome. I think they're hard to find at reasonable prices, and that is another very temperamental car. I mean, that is a car, again, for someone, if you like reliability, be careful with the RX-7 because they're not great. Neither is an RX-8, honestly, in a lot of ways. But the RX-7 is a super cool car, obviously. I mean, they're legendary cars. It's one of the all-time greats from Japan, and they're awesome. So, I mean, if you can afford one and you're okay with, again, them being a little more temperamental, definitely go for it. That's another car that we'll continue to appreciate, I think, for as long as cars exist. People are always going to love those things, and so I think it's probably a solid just a solid investment in addition to being, a very solid, fun car to, play around with. Joe Blow says, how reliable do you think the C6 Z06 is? I think they seem to be pretty reliable. I honestly don't follow those very closely, so I'm not sure, but I haven't seen tons of people complaining about them blowing up. So I would assume they're decent, but again, I think the best way to judge is see how many people are complaining about them on the Facebook page for that vehicle or the forums for that vehicle. That's the way to go if you're trying to figure out if something's reliable or not. Because otherwise, it's always going to be a hit or miss thing. You hear one thing from one person, one thing from another, and you're always going to get like the people that are super angry that, complain about them. Consumer Reports kind of does a decent job of also reporting reliability. Generally, if you're looking at normal cars and stuff, but it's kind of tricky. And that's kind of one of the reasons why a lot of people wonder why I don't talk about reliability a whole lot sometimes. And that's just because it really is very much a hit or miss thing with a lot of vehicles. I mean, there's some people that complain, oh, like my Hyundai is super unreliable. Another person literally drives 1 million miles, like that lady that drove 1 million miles in her Elantra. And so it's like you have these very two extremes. You have people that say they're total lemons and someone who drove 1,000,000 miles in their Elantra. So it's like, clearly, this means that not every car is the same. And, you have some that are good, some that are bad. That goes for any car, for any brand. I've heard of Toyota lemons. I've heard of, Alfa Romeos that are indestructible. It goes all over the place. And so, that's why you kind of have to just take the average of everything you see and then roll the dice. And obviously there's some safer bets. Like I always tell people, if you want the most reliable car possible, buy a Toyota, you'll be good. If you're terrified about a car breaking down, buy a Toyota, never worry. There are some safe bets like that, but with a lot of the other stuff, it's very hit or miss. And Newt Media says it's like Subaru and the head gasket jokes. Yeah, and that's another thing. But in the general consensus in the Subaru community, it's like, oh, these things run forever. There's all these Subaru commercials about how they have the most vehicles on the road today that are 10 years old or something. And they have all these marketing things. So everyone's like, oh, Subarus run forever. In my experience, Subarus are super unreliable. I mean, I know multiple people, even with regular like Imprezas, that have issues with them burning oil and having all kinds of issues. The WRXs that you breathe on a WRX, and it like seems to start having issues, especially the ones with the older motors. STIs are very fragile. And there's all the jokes about them, but even like the normal stuff, like, I mean, my dad's had to pay out of pocket to fix his 07 Outback back in the day that had issues. And my 97 Subaru Impreza Outback Sport had head gasket issues on it. And it had 132 horsepower. It's not like a motor that was pushed super hard, but it, had head gasket issues. And so, just because it's the most vehicles on the road doesn't mean that those people never fix them. It just means they love them enough to keep dumping money into them to keep them alive. That's all that really proves. And so, that's why it's very, very hard to kind of judge reliability with a lot of vehicles. But yeah, it's always an interesting thing to go back and forth on reliability with people, because I hear some interesting stuff from people saying, oh, well, this car is super reliable. And I'm like, well, I've heard horror stories. And then they hear horror stories about other stuff. And I'm like, well, actually, they're not so bad. From everything I've heard, it's very hit or miss. Thomas, though, is asking, are you going to be at the New York Auto Show? If so, what date? I think I'm going to skip the New York Auto Show. Auto shows are always a losing proposition for me. I know a lot of other channels do really, really well with them. For me, it's just that I'm a one-man crew, and so I cannot physically get up videos as fast or even close to being as fast as the other bigger channels that have an editor that they can just, show up. They stand in front of the car, talk for 3 minutes, and then hurry up and, send off the footage to an editor who goes off and edits it. And then they have another guy that comes and does another thing. And so it's like, anytime I go to an auto show, it's like I'm running around like a chicken with my head cut off trying to hurry up and post videos. And then all of you probably get annoyed because you get 15 videos in your sub feed from me about stuff you probably don't care about aside from one or two. You keep getting like notifications all day if you have notifications signed up and stuff. And again, it's just, and they end up underperforming because they're out, after everyone else's have posted theirs. Meanwhile, I'm here pulling my hair out, rushing to get stuff out whenever it's, going to be late anyway. And so, that's the behind the scenes look at an auto show as a YouTuber. And unless you're one of the top dogs that again has editors and, multiple cameras, multiple computers, all that kind of stuff, it's very tough, to actually beat everyone to the punch. And honestly, even for those guys, it's tough these days because a lot of these companies, they have embargoes that drop at midnight and then they pull the wraps off at 9 a.m. Like, woo, look at this car. And it's like, we all saw it at midnight already. Like, this isn't anything exciting now. And so they've kind of, put a wet blanket on their own debuts half the time because it's like you're, ruining the ooh and the ah of the auto show thing and the whole payoff for us to even go. And so it's like, I could post a video at midnight sitting here in my office like, hey guys, here's the embargo pictures, which look better than the ones I'll take anyway at an auto show. And so anyway, sorry for the rant, but yeah, for all those reasons, I'm not going to any auto shows, I think, anytime soon. It just doesn't make sense. It's fun, if I could just walk around and be like, oh, cool, look, a new car, and then just go home, like, it'd be great, but then it's a waste of time. I'm way too busy to just do random things like that for fun anymore. I'm always working on the next review, working on the next weekly update, all that kind of stuff. So, and anytime I have free time, it's again hanging out with the baby because she is just the best and super fun. So that's my life right now. Nathaniel, thank you so much for a comment here. He says, hey Matt, update on my 2015 Chrysler 200, 175,000 miles now, still going strong, needs catalytic converter, and I have a cylinder 6 coil and spark plug causing misfire. but you've made it to 175,000 miles. Another case in point. You're making my point for me. Thank you so much, Nathaniel. I've heard so many people, oh, Chryslers are lemons. The Chrysler 200 is junk. And here we have someone who just has 175,000 miles on their car on a 2015, no less. Very impressive. You do a lot of miles. I'm jealous of how much driving you do. I would love to do that many miles in 6 years. And it's still going strong. So, I'm sure lots of people have heard, oh, Chryslers are junk. It's Italian garbage and all this other stuff. Clearly it's not. We have at least one that's made it to almost 200,000 miles. So this is why, be wary of all those snarky comments online. Orion says, Matt, thinking of getting a Mustang GT, but the upcoming Nissan Z intrigues me. Thoughts? Well, the Mustang obviously is going to have way more power and obviously a different sound. And kind of like what I was talking about earlier, the Mustang sounds better with the active exhaust and all that kind of stuff. The Z will probably be lacking. But, the Z is going to probably handle a lot better as well because you have, lighter weight. It's a smaller vehicle. Those types of things are very rewarding. And so if you enjoy something smaller, more compact, lighter, a little more sports car like than muscle car like, I think the Z could be better. So it really just comes down to, again, kind of your pros and cons of what you value more. You can't go wrong with either one. That's the good news. So, either way you go, you can have a really fun car. And I think, like anything, it's worth a test drive. Wait until the Z comes out, test drive both, and then make your decision. And, just go for whatever feels more fun to you. I think they're both going to be great. But New Media says my Bug-Eye is almost at 171,000 on its original motor. See, so you're doing good. Even though I'm sure it's had lots of fixes along the way, it's made it. And and we have Evinder says my dad got a 2008 Nissan Altima, 230,000 kilometers, still running strong. There you go. Lots of people say Nissans love to burn oil and they're unreliable. I don't know that generation. I don't think it was a CVT yet, right? I think that was a normal automatic, so you don't have to worry about all this. Oh, it's a CVT comments that always are attached with every single Nissan review I ever do. But yeah, so all kinds of cars that probably are more reliable than people realize. I think all modern cars have come so far that, even back, 20 years ago, a car even getting to 100,000 miles was like a big accomplishment, unless you were talking about a Honda or a Toyota, those it was expected. Everything else, it was like, wow, 100,000 miles, you did really good. And even before that, it was like, you got to like 50,000 miles on a car. It's like, wow, this thing's actually doing really well. It's a good car. And these days it's like, everything is doing 200,000 miles, no problem, basically. And, we're really, I think, spoiled in a lot of ways with just how good cars have gotten and how high performing they are too. Not only do they make it to 200,000 miles, but they have faster 0 to 60 times than most cars made in the past 70 years. And they're, they handle way better than anything back then. It's very impressive how far we've all come. But Jonah says, how's the baby doing? The baby is doing great. Yeah, she is awesome. She's so smart. She's so advanced. I think she's just so fun. She's doing great. She's healthy. She's strong. She's progressing normally, developing great, all that kind of stuff. She's doing awesome. So thank you for asking. It's a lot of fun. It's way more fun than even I was expecting, honestly. I was not expecting to be as obsessed with her as I am. She is just the best. So it's a lot of fun. It's kind of funny too, because it's like my whole camera roll on my phone used to just be like car pictures, press cars, bullet pictures, stuff like that. And now it's just like nothing but baby pictures for most of my camera roll. It's just, she's just insanely cute. But anyway, see, Evinder says the Altima was a CVT, and I don't know, if it had to do any fixes to it, but that's awesome that, it's a CVT with, that many miles on it and it's still going well. So yeah, it's another thing. Not all Nissan CVTs are terrible, as much as people would like to think so. And many angry YouTube mechanics would like to think so as well. They're not always terrible. Snarkle says Mach 1 review coming soon. Unfortunately, I have no clue when I'm reviewing a Mach 1. Ford has not had a Mach 1 press vehicle on the East Coast, at least that I know of. I've been requesting one since they debuted them last year. Nothing. Not even an automatic one. I honestly just mostly want to review the manual, but nothing at all. I've heard radio silence as far as Mach 1s. If any of you own a Mach 1, I would love to have, one of you offer one. I would love to review one that way, because I would very much like to try it out. But yeah, Ford doesn't seem super interested in promoting it, aside from to the few people that they invited on the press launch, and that was it. I was not invited on that, which is so bizarre because that's a whole other tangent. But it's like I went on the GT500 launch, and that was a lot of fun, and then haven't gotten anything since, so yeah, we'll see what happens. I'd love to review Mach 1. It seems like a very promising vehicle, but in the meantime, like I said, hopefully I'll have another GT350 review coming here soon from someone that offered that. Anyway, May Testong, I don't know if I butchered that pronunciation, but thank you so much for the super chat. He says, late to chat, not sure if you answered this yet, but what top 3 cars are you looking forward to most in the near future? I got to think about this one. Top 3 cars in the near future. GR86 and the BRZ, that's kind of, doesn't count as 2. So that's one. I'm really excited for the IS500. That's another one because it's a V8 sports sedan, which doesn't really exist anymore and is very much going to go by the wayside very quickly. So that is a car I'm going to savor while it's here. What is the third? I mean, the Z, I would say it's probably going to be the Z. Like I said, I'm skeptical about the exhaust note, but I think that aside from that, it's going to be awesome. It's just awesome that Nissan's doing it at all. We have a new sports car coming that is always something to be celebrated, regardless of how it got here, what its underpinnings are, whatever. It's a new sports car, and it's one that's going to look gorgeous as well and should be a great performer. So I think those are probably the 3 that I'm most excited about. I think the new WRX sounds like it's also around the corner. I saw some news speculation saying that it could do a worldwide debut in September and then have a US reveal at the LA Auto Show possibly this year. So we could finally be actually close to seeing a new generation WRX. I kind of have a very pessimistic view of Subaru's future, so I'm going to hold out my hope for the new WRX. I'm not going to get too excited, hoping for something more than what it will probably end up being, but that's another one that I'm looking forward to. But I think those are probably the most. But anyway, thank you so much for the super chat. So we have Great Wall 10 says, say you have 2 lasagnas and you stack them together. Is that 1 or 2 lasagnas? I would say that would be 1 lasagna, right? Because I don't think there's a limit to how many layers you can have on a lasagna. If I'm thinking correctly, I don't know. So I would consider that probably 1 lasagna, 1 extra large lasagna. Thanks for the fun question. B. Mitchell says, on the list for a press real Bronco yet? The event just happened. I wasn't invited to that. But as far as press vehicles, I would assume they'll be coming out pretty quickly since production has started. I'm usually pretty low on the totem pole as far as when I get press vehicles. It's like I'm usually one of the later ones to get it, just because my channel is smaller than a lot of the other bigger people, and also my press fleet's smaller than most of the other bigger press fleets, so I'm lower on the totem pole. But they know I want to review the new Bronco for sure. So I mean, hopefully it'll come before the end of this year. That's my rough estimate. I'm not sure if it'll be any sooner than that, but I'd be totally cool with driving one in the middle of the winter. I would love, if I don't get it till February or something, that's fine with me. I can, drive it in 10 inches of snow. That'd be an absolute blast. So, I don't know when that's coming. It's not on the schedule yet. And I have my stuff already scheduled out into September for press cars, and that it's not on that list yet. So it's going to be definitely beyond September when I get it. And Big RR64 says he's excited for the new Ford Maverick little pickup truck. I think it may be a big winner. I think that is, the Maverick is one of the best values in the car world. That and the Lightning are 2 that Ford just knocked it out of the park with both of those, and they're both going to sell like crazy. The Maverick especially, $20,000. I mean, that's cheaper than like a Fiesta was going for most of the time. So like, I don't know how they're selling that, and with a hybrid powertrain at 20 grand, they must be losing money on every one of those things they sell for at least for a little bit. I'm sure they'll raise the price eventually. It'll be like the C8 Corvette, where it's like, ooh, it's 60 grand. And then the next year it's 61, and then it's 62. I feel like there may be something like that with the Maverick. So if you're on the fence and you want a 20 grand Maverick, buy it now, because I don't think they can keep that price up very long. But even if they do, yeah, I mean, maybe they just think they'll sell enough of them that they can just, it's kind of the Costco discount and they kind of will still end up making a little bit of money on them or something. I have no clue, but yeah, it blew my mind when I saw, because I heard speculation about 20 grand. I'm like, yeah, there's no way it's going to be $20,000. And then it actually is 20 grand. I'm like, man, I don't know how that works. But hey, that's awesome. Hopefully they're built, pretty well. But yeah, I think the Maverick's going to be awesome. I'm very excited to review that. I think they're going to, be churning those out pretty quickly. I haven't heard anything about any press launch or anything like that, but hopefully I'll get one pretty quickly to review because I'm very curious about that. I think it's going to be a great little truck. So Nathaniel, thank you so much for the super chat here. This might be the last one here, so we're coming up on 2 hours, and I'm going to probably be cutting it off here. But he says, we all know why FCA gets hate. The retired drunk. Probably a good bit of that, although I think a lot of retired drunks really love the Mopar stuff as well. I mean, there's a lot of, retired drunks that like all kinds of stuff. I don't want to stereotype, but, I think it's just the internet. Everyone's anonymous. Everyone can mouth off and say whatever they want to say with no repercussions. And so I think everything gets hate. FCA gets hate, but I mean, every time I post a Nissan, like I said, they get hate. Everything gets hate. The GR86, I was going to bat for that thing. And whenever I posted the pictures of that, everyone wants to dog the GR86. And it's like, great. This is a recap of the past 9 years when I had my BRZ. 9 years ago, I bought that thing and everyone was like, oh, it's slow. It's like dumb. And everyone just hated on that. And I had to defend that car over and over again, all through 2012, whenever I was making my videos with that thing. And now here we are, 2021, 9 years later, nothing has changed. Everyone says it's slow. I want 1,000 horsepower for $30,000 and everything else. And so, there's haters for every car. And that's one thing I've definitely learned. All you gotta do is look at the comments on any car review I've ever done, and you'll see there's plenty of haters for every single car out there. It's just our culture these days, unfortunately. Like we were talking about earlier with social media and how it's just generally not as much fun as it used to be. But anyway, we'll do one more question here so we're not ending on a negative note here. The blue Subaru, Kristen says, yeah, it was, that's one of the reasons why I'm really tempted to try and find a way to add a GR86 or a BRZ to the garage, because I love that thing and I miss it a lot. And I would love to kind of, relive some of that fun with a new GR86. That would be really, really cool. So yeah, I guess we'll end it there. But yeah, thank you all so much for joining for this live stream. Thank you, especially to everyone that did a super chat. I really, really appreciate that. Hopefully you guys had a good amount of your questions answered. I know there were so many more I didn't have a chance to get to here, but thank you all for joining. Again, we'll do another one of these next month, hopefully. So, definitely come back then, and hopefully I can answer your questions if I didn't then. And also feel free, again, you can always reach out on social media, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. I'm on all that stuff. Just, search for the channel on there, and always feel free to ask questions. I'm always happy to answer. If you have any car questions, you're shopping around, definitely send me a message. I love helping people find a car they're going to love. Obviously, the reviews do a lot of that, but if you have any follow-up questions, I'm more than happy to always help anyone find a car they're going to be happy with. That's what wakes me up in the morning. That's what gets me motivated to do this stuff. I love helping you guys find a car you're going to love. But yeah, so that's it for this live stream, though, not weekly update. But anyway, thank you guys very much for watching. And yeah, I'll see you guys here this Wednesday for the review of Beth's Mercedes, of a car that has been waiting a long time to be reviewed. Finally going to be posting that here on Wednesday. So stay tuned for that. But yeah, thank you guys again for watching. I'll see you on the next one. Take care.